there. AGP, are we ready to go? Just a minute? Okay. Okay, we'll pause until we get the mics right.
It's going. We're good.
We're good. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I'd like to call this meeting to order today. If you will please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And I'm happy to say we have a quorum. And do we have a report from closed session, Mr. Cornell?
Well, we did have a closed session. We did my evaluation. I'm still here. We did the general manager's evaluation and had some labor negotiations, but there's nothing to report.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, then we will move to special reports. And first we will hear from Commander Taylor, representing the Sheriff's Department. Nice to see you, Commander Taylor.
Nice to see you folks. For the period between June 25th and July 22nd, the Sheriff's Office received 304 calls for service in Cambria. Included in these numbers are 27 traffic stops by deputies on vehicles that were either suspicious or were stopped for vehicle code violations. There were 7 pedestrian contacts where a deputy stopped a person on foot to talk to them. We had 20 alarm calls for both audible and motion sensor alarms. No thefts or property damage occurred with those. There were 22 foot patrols conducted in the creeks and in the canyon areas looking for illegal encampments. We had 17 disturbing the peace calls. They ranged from loud music to loud subjects. 3 of those calls resulted in arrests by deputies. 1 was for public intoxication and 2 arrests were for domestic violence. We did not have any vandalisms during this reporting period. We had 14 theft reports. Now these included 3 separate incidents of gasoline being siphoned from parked cars in the 2900 block of Burton, the 600 block of Warren Road, and the 2400 block of Village Lane. 3 bicycles were stolen from outside of residences. A set of tools was stolen from a construction site at 300 Orlando Drive in that 300 block. The Southern California Gas Company reported that suspects broke into a cellular phone equipment box at the corner of Ardith Street and Leon Road, and they stole 1 12-volt sealed battery and a 24-inch by 18-inch solar panel, which was valued at $2,000. And then we had 8 thefts from unlocked cars where items such as purses, briefcases, and other miscellaneous items were stolen. 3 of those thefts occurred in the 2000 block of Sky Street, and the remainder occurred in the 2400 block of Pine Ridge, 2100 block of Orm Place, 3300 block of Ramsey, 300 block of Weymouth, and at the corner of Village Lane and Burton Drive where someone had stolen license plate off of a vehicle. We had 5 burglaries during the reporting period. 6500 block of Moonstone Beach Drive, there was a window smash on a vehicle and a purse was taken. 5200 block of Hillcrest Drive, there was a chainsaw stolen from a garage. The 200 block of Monte Cristo Place, we had a vehicle window smashed and a laptop computer was stolen, along with some Nintendo game equipment. The 2900 block of Burton Drive, suspects broke into a locked camper shell on a truck and stole 5 gallons of diesel fuel and some tools from the bed of the truck. And in the 3700 block of Rogers Drive, we had an iPod, cell phone, Ray-Ban sunglasses, and a silver card case stolen from a vehicle that was parked in the garage. Now, in the last case, we had a deputy sheriff on patrol in San Miguel who stopped a subject for a probation check, and while checking the items in his possession, the deputy found an iPod and a Samsung cellular phone. When the deputy inspected the phone, he found that the SIM card had been inserted backwards to prevent the phone's use. When the deputy turned the SIM card around
and turned the phone on, it began receiving text messages for somebody other than the man who was in possession of it. Using the information found on the phone, the deputy contacted the owner, contacted the owner, who was a man in Cambria, who informed the deputy that he'd been a victim of a theft which he had not reported. So the stolen phone and iPod were recovered for the owner, and the deputy arrested Manuel Padilla Jr., 32 years of age, a resident of San Miguel, for possession of stolen property. We had 2 spousal abuse arrests. First incident was a 2500 block of Wilcombe. Deputies were sent to a disturbance call, and upon arrival found that 2 subjects living at the residence, a boyfriend and girlfriend, had gotten into an argument over the girlfriend's wanting to see her friends. Argument escalated, and the boyfriend hit the girlfriend in the head with his hand, causing swelling and bruising. He was arrested and booked into county jail. The second incident was the 2200 block of Sandown Place. Deputies responded to a disturbance call and learned from the victim that her husband had left the house to go out drinking with friends. The victim locked up the house after putting her children to bed, and at approximately 1:40 in the morning, husband returned home and, not being able to get into the house, began yelling expletives while on the porch, which is what prompted the neighbors to call the deputies. When the wife let the husband in, he continued to yell at her. When she went to the bedroom to get away from him, he attacked her and attempted to strangle her. Due to the suspect's intoxication, the wife was able to fight him off. She called 911 herself, and then her teenage children came in and attempted to calm the father down. Deputies ended up arresting him for spousal abuse and booked him into county jail. The July 4th holiday was quiet. We only received 3 calls for service that day, and only one of those was criminal in nature, and it was regarding intoxicated teenagers at the park. As far as the Fern Canyon update, on July 2nd, we had a deputy sheriff assigned to provide site security for the work crews who were disassembling the structure that had been found in Fern Canyon. The deputy contacted a transient at the site and subsequently found him in possession of a switchblade knife. That subject, a Cody Shea Flammer, a transient, 23 years of age, was arrested on a weapons charge and booked into jail. We've continued to hike through the creeks, finding new encampments. We're posting the 72-hour eviction notices. If there's anyone present, we also serve them with the notice personally. The notices that are posted are photographed, and then there is an incident report written by the deputy to document that it was posted, and we made every effort to inform whomever was living there that they had to clear out. At this point, there's been 10 camps that have been posted and cleared. I hiked the Caltrans right-of-way a few days ago from Santa Rosa Creek south. I found one campsite that was still inhabited. I made contact with the people and explained to them again that they're going to have to move on. The rest of the campsites appear to be abandoned. However, they have left a huge amount of trash behind them. And the Cambria Fire Safe Council, some of the members have met with Caltrans and advised them of the problem. Caltrans' response has been that they're shorthanded at this time of year, and they're not sure when they would be able to get up and get the area cleaned. Of course, they welcomed any community volunteers that wanted to do it on their own, but they have been made aware of it, and we'll keep on them to try and get the area cleared of the debris and trash. And that's the report for this month.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments? Director Thompson?
Yes, Commander, thank you for your report, very comprehensive. Had a question about cell phones. I understand that the application has been submitted to the county, and actually also for Chief Lewin. Both the Chamber and the Friends of the Fiscalini Ranch Preserve have endorsed the concept of increasing the coverage of cell phones in the community for public safety purposes, and have asked that if you or the fire department could provide any kind of assistance in expediting that process at the county level, that would be certainly appreciated.
I plan on talking to the sheriff about writing a letter of support. I know at our Fire Safe Council meeting yesterday, Dan Turner, who's the retired county fire chief and is a member of the council, he had a letter that he had drafted and was signed by Supervisor Meacham, who's the president of the Fire Safe Council, to the head of county planning. And it's my understanding it's that gentleman is who reviews and ultimately grants an approval or an expedited process for the cell phones. Cellular communication is vital, and it's not just for the sheriff's office or the fire department. We rely on computer-aided dispatch, our CAD units in our vehicles, rely on cellular sites in order to send and receive the information. That's critical during a fire event. It's critical really during any type of event, search for a missing person, Alzheimer patient, et cetera, because we access maps. We're able to transmit and receive data through those cars. They're in a sense a mobile command post because of the computer. But the other thing about the cellular coverage to keep in mind is you've got a lot of tourists that come through here. And think about this for a moment. You have spotty coverage along Moonstone Beach Drive. How would any one of us feel if we learned that there was a child who drowned and someone had witnessed it and been unable to alert authorities in time using their cellular phone because they couldn't get coverage, and perhaps they weren't in physical shape enough to swim out and retrieve the child? It's just, there's so many things in this day and age to go without, and cellular phone service just seems like one of the must-haves instead of a nice thing to have. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. Next, our fire report, and we have with us Chief Lewin. Nice to see you.
Thank you, Robert Lewin. Thank you, President and directors, for having me today. The report in your package, of course, is quite complete, but I want to hit a couple of highlights on here. First, let me pick up on this question about the importance of cellular. No question about it. This is a big issue. One of the things that's important for people to remember is that while sometimes cellular systems many times cellular systems will be overwhelmed during an emergency, even if they're work every day, they find that they'll reach capacity and then they won't work. And so one thing for people to consider is to use text messaging when that occurs, so they can let their relatives and let others know what's going on with them, because those use very little bandwidth, and those messages will be queued up and then they will get delivered. So that's something we even use. We had a fire recently south of Lake Nacimiento, the Deer Fire, and while we couldn't communicate by phone with our folks out there because it's so isolated, we were able to sneak in text messages to the incident commander, et cetera. One of the technologies that we recently have in that same vein is a new satellite system that can be set up very promptly. It's all in large suitcases, and it sets up a significant hotspot for our emergency responders, both for data and for voice. So that's new technology that we were able to acquire. We got that through Homeland Security funds through the county OES. Okay, some other things that are going on operationally. The water tender that the CCSD has was deployed to that same fire, the Deer Fire, for 12 hours, and that was a very good use of that equipment. It also gives an opportunity for the firefighters to be on a large incident and get that exposure to that. The Fire Safe Focus Group, as was stated, has met with Caltrans, and I'm going to let Alan Peters come up here in a minute and highlight some of the things that they've talked about. Also, some efforts that are occurring on marking trees on the Fiscalini Ranch, and additional grant application that's going to be submitted by the Fire Safe Council on behalf of Cambria's continuing tree and drought issues. The fire prevention effort is good. The weed abatement program, fuel reduction program for Cambria by the CCSD was completed at your last meeting. We thank you all for that effort. And we do finally have 2 fire prevention signs installed in town, as you've probably seen, although one of my understanding needs to get moved. It's wasn't put where it was supposed to be, so it's in the Caltrans right away, so we're going to have to remedy that. That shouldn't be a problem. As far as the transition goes from the fire chief to management by our department, it's going well. That's what I'm glad to state. We did create a 60-day plan, and we're following. We have completed the first segment of that, which is the first 15 days. That was a period of time when Chief Miller, before he retired, we completed the tasks on there, or some of the tasks got continued on to the next 30 days. So we're moving forward on the next 30 days, and we'll continue to do that. A couple of things that I wanted to highlight is that we have included in that reaching out to our stakeholders. So I did meet recently at a meeting with the CERT the local CERT, an amazing group of people. There was over 50 people in attendance, full of energy, and I'm just glad that we can be part of that. And then yesterday I was at a meeting with the county's organization of volunteers for emergencies called VOAD, and we had a good meeting with many the types of organizations besides CERT, and your folks from CERT were there as well. So we're going to keep embracing this volunteerism here in Cambria and work towards seeing what we can do to even enhance it if possible. It's pretty good, though, the way it is. So with me today, I have two folks, John G., who's one of our inspectors here, who works every day here in Cambria inspecting homes, so you can meet him. But I also want to bring up now Alan Peters, our forester, who can give you some visuals on what we've been doing on the inspection front with our problems here.
Thank you very much, and welcome, Forester Peters, today. How are you?
I'm well, thank you, President Robinette and members of the board. I did bring a couple of slides just to kind of bring you up to speed on what we've done in the last few weeks. The first slide shows a picture of a portable RAW station, and we just set this up today at 10 o'clock up off on a property on San Simeon Creek Road. So the portable RAWs is right now going through the process of acquiring the satellite and getting oriented. And by tomorrow, we'll have accurate weather data from right here. And what that means is we've done some really highly technological things to come up with this screenshot on the right is from my smartphone. And everybody's seen the smoky signs when you drive around the forest, you know. Everybody's familiar with those. This is automated electronic smoky that we have on our smartphones and on the website, and this is updated based on the weather. So, and it's totally automated. So that's a screenshot from my smartphone. So it allows all of the operational folks to make, you know, operational decisions and resource allocations and move things around based on the weather. So we're really, this is total geek stuff. I couldn't explain it if I tried, but this isn't done anywhere as far as I know. This is the only place where something like this has occurred. Next slide. Our inspections continue. John G. is in the back of the room. He's one of our two inspectors that have been here since April 1st. He's also a recent Cal Poly graduate in forestry. Right now, this shows kind of a larger area, you know, San Simeon and out some of the roads. But in the district here, we're slightly past 2,000 inspections. We've done. Of those, there were roughly 300 violations. By the second inspection, there's been about 200 second inspections, and currently after those, there's about 100 violations that need a third inspection. So what that really means is out of 2,000 roughly landowners, there's 100 that might need some more stern follow-up. So that's only 5%, and we think that's pretty good. So people have done a good job, and we're happy with 5%. So because in all likelihood, a lot of those folks will do the work that we're asking them to do also. Next slide. So this is just a kind of a zoomed-in example of what our smartphone app looks like that we use. The green are the passing lots, the red are the violations, and so on. So that's just what our smartphone app looks like. Next slide. Commander Taylor referenced the Caltrans area. We did meet with them last Monday, Dan Turner and myself, and they're interested in giving us what they call a letter of consent to do work within the Caltrans right-of-way from Ardith to Santa Rosa Creek. And it'll actually be primarily from Santa Rosa Creek up to Fern Canyon, because what they can authorize under this simple permit without going through the whole, you know, coastal permitting process is to allow us to remove the French broom. And if you're familiar with that side, especially the west side of the road, or west or south, there's it's a kind of a wall of French broom in there. And so we should be able to get that letter of consent, and 3Cs have funding to do the work, and they're available probably in August. So I got my fingers crossed that in August we'll have 3Cs engaged in clearing French broom and all the down dead wood, because we can do that Caltrans was comfortable with authorizing that immediately. So that'll be really good, because even doing something that simple really provides a good fire prevention benefit, because that French broom is so dense on that side of the highway that'll create, you know, a good start to a fuel break. The rest of the map is just some of the other work we've been assisting with. You know, like Chief said, I have a great fun part of my job is working with all the groups up here. You know, with Holly and with the Forest Committee and the Fire Safe Council. There's just it's hard to keep up with all the activity. And you know, on the Fiscalini Ranch, the 3 polygons there are some proposed 1-acre treatment areas we're talking about. So the pink are all the hazard trees that I've flagged on the Fiscalini Ranch. And so, you know, this is just an example of some of the work that's going on. And this is actually work we hope to do soon. Next slide. I'm not sure how many folks are aware of the forest assessment project that we've been doing. Professor Bisbing from Cal Poly, she's a professor of silviculture. She outlined a whole strategy to do forest inventory plots. And so you can see all the dots on the map on the Rancho Marino Reserve, Fiscalini, and the Covell Ranch that's the grid. And all these plots involve a really detailed set of forest measurements on all the vegetation and trees get measured in great detail, and it provides us forester types all the information we need to know what's growing there and what's growing, dying, and how and these are being established permanently. There's little tags going on the trees, so this can be remeasured every 5 or 10 years and be a continuous forest inventory kind of thing. So it's really a neat thing, and it's a great opportunity for Cal Poly and all the students that they'll have over the next decades to use the Cambria forest as their study area. So we've completed the Rancho Marino plots. Fiscalini plots are almost done. There's a couple more of those, I think, and then they're well underway on the Covell Ranch. So next slide. In the grant world that Chief mentioned, the Fire Safe Council, on behalf of the community, submitted the 2 greenhouse gas reduction funds grants. That's what that acronym is. Both of those total roughly $2 million. They have been evaluated by CAL FIRE at the region and Sacramento levels and ranked. Now it's just kind of the process that it has to go through with this is a real cumbersome process and the laws behind it, and we have to eventually get California Air Resources Board to approve on all those awards. So that's going well, and the grant applications they're in a good position currently. The other grant that Chief mentioned is due here real soon, the Western States grant, and that we'll be working with the groups to hopefully look at that opportunity. Next slide. Or is that it? Okay, that's it. That's really what we have going on right now that we're engaged with. There's a lot of other activities that are longer kind of planned for greater out in the future. But with that, I will stop talking and happy to answer any questions you might have.
Well, first, thank you both for the very good update, very comprehensive. Questions or comments from the board? Director Rice?
Thank you, President Robinette. Would it be possible for us to get a copy of the slideshow that you presented? Is that a doable?
Yes, he has that.
Okay, that would be great, because I'd just like to kind of look at it in closer detail. Even with my glasses, it's hard to see some of that. Thank you very much for the report. The other question I had is on the properties that you're inspecting, the residential properties. Are you finding there's a lot that have trees that have to come out?
It's still kind of hard to estimate, on a percentage basis or what, but there are There are a lot. I mean, it's hard to.
On those 100 that may need a more stern follow-up, as you said, are those primarily about the distance from the house that the vegetation is, or
Most of those aren't. I would say that the vast majority of those aren't tree-related violations. It's vegetation or needles on the roof, and kind of a lot of simpler things. So that's not the major source of the violations.
Okay, thank you.
Other comments, questions? Okay, and that was kind of what I was thinking too, because we continue to talk about, the tree removal and trying to work with county too. But it is important to know, I think, from the inspections that you've had, the 2,190, that right now we're at 100, which is really small, of course, quite a compliment and tribute to Cambrians and getting defensible space in place. And I do think it's kind of an important question to look at those. They'll be back for yet a second review, and because I know we really are very interested in later in the meeting today about the conversation of removing trees. With regard to FERP, the ranch, and also Covell trees, and I think you mentioned Fiscalini maybe outside the ranch too. Are some of those trees that have been identified, are they actually in process of being removed?
Not on CCSD property.
Okay.
We have removed some as part of our ongoing fuel maintenance that we've been doing for 4 years now on the Bridge Street project on the Covell Ranch. But we have not removed any trees on CCSD property or anywhere other than our crews did, other than assisting county roads, I should say. We did do some tree removal and cutting for them.
Okay, thank you. Because I know we had an inquiry from some people regarding the Covell Ranch, and so is that pretty much in a better place, do you think, by now, as far as threat to residential that's within Cambria?
As far as the threat to homes, there really are only 2 homes. There's a couple on Northampton that are kind of in a dangerous trees, and then there's 3 or 4 around the perimeter of the cemetery that are leaning, large 100-foot plus tall trees that are leaning over the fence of the cemetery that are dead. So those need to be addressed. But for homes, the Bridge Street project on Covell is in decent shape. There's only probably less than 10 trees that are kind of scary. There are a few that could fall in Bridge Street itself, which are also, that's also an important problem. But the highest priority ones are just a few on Covell. The trees on Fiscalini, there's really only one I can remember that's even close to a house. So on this CCSD property behind the water treatment, there are 6 or 8 that are close enough to hit homes there. So those need to be addressed, and Mr. Mendoza's working with us on that.
Okay, thank you very much. That's really nice, I think, for the residents to know that yes, they're in a good spot at this point. Okay, no other comments? Director Rice.
Thank you, President Robinette. I did have a question from somebody who was asking about the work that had been done on Covell that's around the edge of town. That there had been, it looked like the work had stopped for a little while, and there were big piles of potential bonfire, for lack of a better word. Can you give me an update on?
Yep, that project, since we started, that has been and probably always will be a continuous maintenance kind of a situation. So those are, forest management's a long-term, forest management takes decades and centuries, obviously. So there are times when it looks rough around the edges. Also, the residents around there also, reminding me that the French broom's coming back in several areas. So we're aware of that, and it is time. It's been a little over 3 years since we did the work, so it is time. It's roughly 3 or 4 years when you do need to go back and do maintenance work. And with dead trees dying at the rate they are, then that increases that. But we'll probably have maintenance work to some degree to do there, nearly every year or every other year at the very least. So just the nature of the forest.
Thank you. And it is so nice in our community to see the real cooperative, collaborative efforts going on with actually on Park Hill. If anyone lives on Park Hill, I see my neighbors here, Bill. But it's been kind of interesting how many agencies got involved in just kind of clearing brush as you come out of Park Hill as you're headed back toward Highway 1. On the right side, there were trees where the county right-of-way had wanted to wait and check and make sure it wasn't nesting season, and then now they've taken those down. But they were very careful with their, monitoring that. That certainly is very important to monitor. And then we have going from the Cambria Hotel, the boardwalk there was just beginning to be just covered with all the, just overgrowth. And so State Parks was very cooperative in getting to that. And then the county right-of-way, and they had taken care of theirs. And now we have a couple of property owners that are being contacted because they are the ones with huge stacks of dried, almost looks like great big bonfire stacks. And but it's just nice because it seems that the agencies work so well together too. And the bottom line is everyone doing their best to protect our community. So I thank you for all of that.
You're very welcome. It's a really fun job I have. So I really enjoy working with the other groups, and with the focus group coming back together, that is a really outstanding umbrella with all those members on it. So we have every agency and all the local groups that are here that need to be involved, and with the Forest Committee and the NCAC, all the groups. There's to do all the, it takes a lot of expertise to do these projects because of the, the environmental regulations here and just the environment. And we have, I think we have all the expertise we need with all these people. So it's nice to not have a lot of, of holes in the.
That's the thing. We don't seem to have gaps. I know when I go to the kind of the revival of the forest of the fire focus, or if Director Barnder goes, we really, I think, can see that this collaboration is really just multi-agency volunteers, and that's the kind of thing I think that really does make us know that these are intended to keep us where we need to be, and that is safe. So that's something I surely appreciate. Thank you. Okay, that's all under special reports, and now we'll move to presentation that we have on our monthly agenda, and we have former Senator Dean Flores to bring us up to date on his work with us and a lot of agencies.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to spare Monique moving through PowerPoint today. So I'm going to just give you a verbal report if I could. It's been a busy month. First, let me start with some sort of logical sequence. So let's start at the federal level, if we could. As you know, the federal government has moved on the water issue with one very large bill that has moved from the House now to the Senate, with little chance of passage at this point in time, but a lot of room for negotiation with Senator Feinstein, who is the lead person in the Senate that will be taking the California drought bill and trying to figure out a viable compromise. In that, I would say her staff has been very diligent and have had some great talks about Cambria with Feinstein's office. And the goal there, one, is to inform their office exactly kind of where we're at in the process. But more importantly, I imagine in that bill there will be a lot of grant dollars or some sort of funding mechanism at the federal level, and I wanted to make sure that we're not left out of those discussions. Those are super important to have. And I think those discussions have centered on two things. One, not only our emergency water system, which they are very interested in, and I think very happy with the progress we've made thus far, but more importantly, on the wastewater component, how we can bring hopefully more funds to Cambria. So we're having those discussions, and those things happen very quickly. Compromise bills happen, funding's put in, and we want to at least make sure that we're in the mix as that continues. So I would say on the funding side, as a percentage basis, we're probably about 30% there. We have about 70% to go in terms of getting more players involved in this on the waterfront, including Congressman Denham, Congressman Valadeo, and a few others. So I will just say we're going to continue to proceed on. We should not leave any dollar unturned, so we'll continue to work on that level. Let me turn to the state. Obviously, we've had a lot of irons in the fire when it comes to the state. So let me first start with the state parks issue, and I believe that we have made great significant changes in terms of the new era of cooperation. And I believe that at some point now it's probably time to sit down and have some more conversations at the local level. I do know that's occurring, I believe, in a couple of weeks. Hopefully that will be a very positive outcome, and hopefully it would allow us to have a more long-term access to the things that we need access to. And I hope to be part of those meetings if the board will allow me to do that. But I do know that that's important and on the agenda. So in terms of the work that I was asked to do on that, I would probably say I probably couldn't do any more. I think really it's now in the board's hands. So I'd probably say about 80%, and now it's 20% relationship from the board level to the person here at the local level. Let me turn my attention to the Department of Water Resources and also some bond funding that we're seeking. I do know that Bob has been very busy getting all the documents in order, and I know we have been signed a PM. I think at this point in time, what it sounds to me like the state is ready to take a whole bunch of projects in the next month and move them to a funding level. I think we're probably in the second tier, but I do think that there are some things that they want to fast track in a quicker manner. And you might wonder why that is. I just don't have to tell you about this discussion about El Nino and the fact that the state would really like to make sure we use those funds as quickly as possible so we don't get hit with an onslaught of water and not have any real viable projects, even in the drought, to kind of move those forward. So I think you're going to find more fast-track projects, particularly from the governor's office, pushing these projects that we're currently in mid-range to much more faster range. That means our project hopefully will move quicker and faster in the process. From my perspective, the work to get the district to the table, I think I'm probably about 70% done. And unfortunately, Bob has the hardest 30%, and the district as well, now kind of getting the paperwork and everything necessary to move forward. Let me just turn also, if I could, not pass the bond funding to the legislature. And I have spent a good, enormous amount of time, probably over the last 3 weeks, in Sacramento. Everyone from Bill Monning to Hannah-Beth Jackson, trying to make sure people understand what Cambria, where it's at. Everyone asked the same question, when will the system go back on? I think we continue to try to talk about how that's going to go on and how it's going to proceed. And I think the more important question is how do we get to a regular permit long term, and making sure they're aware of what it takes to get to that and what kind of role they can play in terms of educating other members to the process. So we've had some very good discussions. I think people are getting more and more aware of the Cambria issue, and I think it looks pretty good in the legislature. Now let me turn to the major amount of work, which is the Coastal Commission. So good meetings in Ventura, spent a little time there, now getting ready to go to Chula Vista. Any of you are welcome to come to San Diego. I think it's an important thing to make sure that everybody has some time at the Coastal Commission. But I think the members themselves are getting very well educated on how far we've progressed, where we're going, what we're doing. I would try to put on your calendar, if possible, early November 5th for members who are interested. I am trying to put a small dinner together with some members of yourselves and a few Coastal Commission members at Half Moon Bay. So I don't think that's too far away, but I think it's enough time to have some planning. But I think even though I've talked about Cambria, I think the goal here is to kind of get a few of you folks to really kind of talk about the Cambria experience. And at the same time, we've asked Senator Monning and a few others to come down and tour the emergency facility. We're waiting answer on that. I've also asked Senator Hannibal Jackson to take a look. She's interested. And we're trying to get more of our environmental chairs to come down and to see the project itself. So I expect to have some dates by the next meeting. But I think it looks all quite promising. The legislature is on break. They come back for a sprint of 30 days, and then they're on break again until January. So I expect really tours to begin somewhere mid-September through December 31st. So we'll find some times to make sure the legislators themselves, who are key and significant in this environmental aspect, come down. And they will have lots of questions. So I think it's really incumbent upon everyone here to make sure we give them the best tour possible. I think, Madam Chair, I think that's pretty much it, and I'll take any questions from the panel.
Thank you very much. Comments, Director Thompson?
Thank you, Senator Flores, for your comments. Question: I saw in the Tribune this morning that Santa Barbara has allocated $55 million to restart or to revive their desal plant, and I was just curious as to whether I assume they're going to have to go through coastal on that also, and I assume that would also be helpful to us in terms of our cause if we have that going on in terms of the issue.
Director Thompson, let me first say that when the water bond was created, and having been a significant author of that, when we put this together back in 2009, it became the water bond minus $5 billion worth of money, but the language stayed the same. I can tell you that when we had those discussions, desal was really a very, very small portion, not on the policy, but just the fact that we just didn't think we would have these types of drought conditions back in 2009, even though we could have looked back to 1997. Out of this $7 billion bond, we allocated a grand total for desal of $100 million. So you can imagine with that, if we had done that today, it would be a completely different story. Maybe would have been $1 billion maybe or so for desal. And the reason for that is we've seen, as you've mentioned, Santa Barbara, we've seen Orange County, we're seeing inland projects on desal. I mean, it is an amazing push to desal. And I think it's quite interesting, the support for desal on the political level. 5 years ago, you couldn't find very many supporters of desal, including Governor Schwarzenegger. Today you find Governor Brown in support, you find the Speaker of the Assembly in support, and you find the Pro Tem of the Senate in support. And I think that's interesting because they all have appointments to the Coastal Commission. So that makes it very interesting, even more so because these Coastal Commission members are holdovers from past appointees. So I think as these desal projects move through the process, and that process is at DWR, that my guess is the Coastal Commission will be the final arbiter of desal, which I don't think anybody ever thought of when we put this $100 million in. We just kind of felt that it would be very small projects and the money would go there. So now we have an oversubscribed amount of money for very little in the pot. So I think there was some discussion about putting more dollars into this from unused drought dollars if indeed at the end of the year drought money goes unutilized. So I can see that Santa Barbara and others will probably be waiting, but I don't think at this point in time they are counting on the state stepping in any time sooner than early next year or mid next year.
Okay, thank you. Director Rice?
Thank you for your report this month.
Thank you.
We talked last month a little bit about having an idea about where you're going to help us get to, and we haven't really had the conversation at the board yet, and I'm still hoping for that discussion to happen. I also don't know, I don't know what's on your to-do list, so when you give us the to-done list, that's great. It's nice to have a to-do list too, so that I can see where the work is happening. It will help, I think, all of us have a productive discussion on where the district needs to be going and where you can help us is, I mean, it'll help you know where you can be helpful, it seems to me.
Sure.
So I would very much like to see something like a conversation at the board level, because clearly there's more going on than just helping us get the regular permit for the emergency system. Mm-hmm. So I think we need to have that discussion, because we need to make sure that the vision is from the board, who was elected by the community to do this job. So I'm super grateful for all of the work that you've done, and clearly we're getting places we never would have otherwise, and your expertise in funding is extremely valuable. So I just want to make sure that we are using it to the best advantage and getting where we really want to be going instead of where we end up. If you don't plan where you're going, you just end up where you are. So
right. If I could just speak to that just briefly, I think in the order of my priorities, we definitely would welcome that. And I do, unfortunately for your GM, have quite a few conversations with him during the week and ongoing. And I think overall, as a percentage, 100% of my time is dedicated to the regular permit. Just want to make sure that the board understands that. Now, your GM and board have asked for an additional 20% above the 100%, which I have fulfilled and continue to try to do that, because I think it all is in one sense, kind of feeds into the way that people view the board, and it also helps us towards a regular permit at the Coastal Commission level. Many, many examples of that. Work at the state parks, Coastal Commission will ask. Work for funding with a wastewater treatment plant, Coastal Commission will ask. Looking at a whole host of other issues I'm working on, I think at the end, a Coastal Commission will ask. They'll ask about a whole host of environmental issues, from ponds to you name it. And so most of what I'm trying to do, including legislators, ask questions about these. So I think overall, the 100% effort towards the regular permit is clearly my sole direction, but there are some other 20% issues that I continue to work on, because I think they feed into the overall goal of the regular permit, which I believe I'm contracted for. So I just want to make sure the board at least understands that, and I'm all for checklist. And so I'll leave it to the board to have a discussion. But I think ongoing, it's kind of hard for me to sometimes put together folks I'll be talking to until I get a meeting or it's after the fact. I can tell you that I am at the Coastal Commission as regularly as I am here. And so that seems to take the majority of my time at this point in time.
Director Barringer.
Thank you for your report. And Director Rice and myself are on an ad hoc committee studying rates, but we're also on one to look into the sewer replacement project. So if we get an opportunity to speak with you on an ad hoc discussion, I think it would be valuable. So hopefully we can contact you on that.
I will set that up. Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
And I'm not on the other ad hoc. There is, I don't know if you have much exposure to lowest caps, but at one time this community has $7 million remaining on a federal project, and I hope that you're aware of that, and anything you can do to unlock some of those dollars would be outstanding.
Director Barringer, to be honest, I was not aware of it, but I am absolutely love to talk to you about how to help at some point, definitely. So then add that 30% more on top of the 100%.
Yes. And I would like to say this too. I think the first 2 months that you were here was just kind of like just a beginning to see where we're going. I think you have done a tremendous job as I agree that when we looked and talked about where do we need support, where do we need help, there's no question that the regular permit is a key goal that we have. I I think following with that now, moving forward, and we do need to have the conversation together as a board, but as ad hocs get formed now that fall under what I consider to be the umbrella of what you're doing, the strategic kind of work you're doing, the interaction and the working with agencies and legislators that we know are going to be very helpful to having Cambria get where we need to be, I think will evolve too. What I appreciate is that you do give, because it's not like you've been working independently, for the work we ask you to start on, I think certainly with working with our Vice President Cliff and with the General Manager in Sacramento was a very important beginning of partnerships. And so I think as we continue forward and we look at the second part, at least in my understanding, is the permit is number one, but funding opportunities was huge. And as we start looking really at phase one of the wastewater that the ad hoc committee will work on, and rates, again, funding and opportunities there would be really important. And speaking of funding, I don't know if there's a connection here because you have been quite busy since you started, and believe me, you're with a group here that will keep you busy, and we know that. When I was listening to the reports this morning, and Forrester Peters was talking about, he was mentioning some grants that CAL FIRE was looking into too. Would that be something that falls a bit under your purview in the first place? You could possibly be involved with that?
If there's a nexus back to the Coastal Commission and how they might feel about the district, absolutely. If it is something that I can help the district on just because of proximity, remember I'm in Sacramento every week, if not twice a week, if not 3 times in 1 week in terms of days. So it is never hard for me to set a meeting up with an agency on an outstanding question, particularly grant funding. Absolutely can do that. No problem with it. I just will keep tabs on, kind of what we do, report back to the board so that everybody understands kind of what I'm doing and go from there.
Right.
Yeah.
I would think with the board right here, we certainly would all be interested in that. So that would be great if it happened to be in the nexus of what you're doing. Vice President Cliff?
Yeah, thank you for, I can understand Director Rice's desire to pin down a specific goal, and I think the fact of the matter is the specific goal is to get that regular permit. My experience with Senator Flores in Sacramento has been that one avenue leads to another. And so it's not like you're always talking specifically about the one permit, because there were people who said, gee, if this could be combined with the wastewater thing, this would be more palatable. And so it takes you off into things. And Senator Flores was very patient with me because he would say, we have a meeting with someone. And I would say, why? Because I didn't understand the connection. And so when you had the meeting, it might not have been totally about getting the regular permit, but it was about making the contact that would reach to the people who made the decisions about the permit. So it's an interesting world, and it's a world that's foreign to most of us, including me. I thought I knew something up there, but I've had an education, a first grade education so far. But I think Senator Flores is committed and directed towards getting that regular permit, but he's doing some other things to enhance why that regular permit is important to this community, and for that I can kind of attest to the fact that he is centered on that one item, and I'm doing a good job.
And if I could just add on to that, the work that you have done in a short time, particularly with our district engineer and the general manager, I think has been very beneficial to us. I didn't on funding prior to this, and I still don't know what it stands for, but I know what it is now. When you mentioned PM earlier, and I know it's not evening time, is what you're talking about, but if you would explain that, and I think our engineer found it very helpful to have your guidance on knowing that we could, in fact, attain that at this point, because it could be very, very significant in our eligibility for funding as he's working on the grants. If you would speak to that.
Well, I think the goal a couple of meetings ago was to get into the funding mix for Prop 1A to make sure we're in the right category. I do know, working with your engineer, there are many facets and aspects of the overall water project here beyond the emergency water project that your district engineer is always asking questions about. So whether it's the community wastewater program in a tank, or whether it's the emergency water system with the appropriate agency, or whether it's something else the district can garner additional dollars for, I can just speak that I think Bob leaves no stone unturned, which also creates a lot of work for me, which is good. I mean, I think it's a good thing. I haven't had to call your engineer and say, have you thought about this piece of funding? It's always kind of the opposite. I get an email and say, I've asked this question and here's where it's led. Could you ask at your level in Sacramento? And I think that's a good process thus far. I think it's led me to other avenues, and I think it helps the district overall in terms of trying to garner more grant funding, which I think you absolutely should. There are some folks that just have a grant team, and that's all they work on all day long as a division. And so there's a nice go-between, I think, in terms of your engineer finding those opportunities. And sometimes they don't lead to what we'd like. I mean, we run into this disadvantaged community roadblock quite frequently. You have the issues, but you don't necessarily, you're not McFarland, California. You're Cambria. And so that leads to, looks like a stopping point, but then your engineer will say, but what about this? And then we have more conversations about it. So I think it's a good process. I do think it leads to, I think as Director Cliff said, different avenues and roads, but they all kind of add up to the same place. I think it adds up to somebody at the Coastal Commission asking, have you done everything you can to create more water beyond this system? And I think if you can point to all of the various things that you're working on, all the various types of improvements, all of the processes in the state that you're working in, I think that tells a good story to the Coastal Commission that this district leaves no stone unturned when it comes to the entire water system here. And I think that's been the positive go-between. And it helps me tell a story to the Coastal Commission, which I think is important.
Thank you. Any further comments?
One last
Yes,
statement.
Vice President Cliff.
There is some discussions going on for a preliminary meeting on the local level with state parks over, several, not just the regular permit issue, but several issues. But that's important because it brings us back together and can lead to making some decisions on other things.
Any, Director Rice?
I don't know what kind of work outside of this. I'm looking at the letter of agreement, talking about the strategy development and your work with us, and I don't know what would require us to expand that scope, because I don't know how much past that 100% you're willing to go before we need to be re-looking at how that happens, because I think that while the district has to get all its ducks in a row for the Coastal Commission for this permit, that also means there's a lot of ducks that are going to get put in a row that are going to need funding, including the wastewater plant and various other things that we need to be bringing up to where because they've just fallen behind in the shuffle of all the other things going on in the district. And so I just want to be sensitive to that, because I do appreciate any amount above the 100%, but I also recognize that you're a professional and you're working on helping us. It'd be nice if we had some kind of roadmap so that when we start to go and we have one of these meetings that shows us an avenue we didn't even know existed, especially as it comes to funding. I think it's important for us to know that we're heading down this road. It may end up leading us to the same end vision, but it's that vision that I'm still kind of missing. We've got a 2008 water master plan that needs to be updated because the things that are in there are out of date now that we have this emergency plant and that we're trying to get regular permitted. So it might be time to be looking at that kind of thing, because I think having everything kind of opened up so that we are able to get the regular permit also means that there's a lot of other things that will get done as a matter of getting that regular permit done, which I'm very glad that this is an impetus to do these things that we should have been doing a while ago, but now that we're getting to them, I think it's important for the board to have that discussion again about that. What's our end point here, and what is it that we're trying to accomplish in terms of the larger vision and the policies that we can enact so that our general manager knows where to go to, and so that our advocate can really be a great advocate, because I think he really believes in this town and what we're trying to accomplish. Still not sure what that sentence is. What are we trying to accomplish other than the regular permit for that? And it seems to me just kind of knowing where we're going is easier to make a map.
Yeah. Just to speak that, Director Rice, I think thought a lot about what you said the last meeting, which was in my simple Shafter summary, are you leading us or are we leading you? I think at the end of it, I think that was the crux of the matter. And as I was driving down the 46, thinking about that question, it has, I think, made me look at what I'm asked to do and how I react to it. And I wanted to make sure you knew, and I think, of course, I think the board should know as well, that I very much work on what is given to me, and I in no way lead the district. And I just want to make sure you knew that. And I looked at the kind of strategic aspect of it you just mentioned, and what is at this point, I was very clear to me I just needed to read the website, and it got pretty clear, again, kind of grounding myself on what the district's goals were. I don't go beyond those goals when I'm talking to various directors and leadership, but I very much hear your comments, and I think they're important.
And I think that we definitely can benefit from getting your feedback and where you think that we could go. I mean, this is a level of expertise that you have a level of expertise that we have not been able to take advantage of yet. And I don't mean to say that I don't want to hear where you think we could go. That's not at all what I'm saying. I don't want to keep you on a road that we don't need to be on when there's something else we could be doing.
Right.
I definitely want to be hearing that, but I think those are also things that need to be made. There are decisions that need to be made, not just at the staff level, but at the board level. So I appreciate, believe me, don't stop giving us input, because it's definitely been very good so far. So,
and I, Madam Chair, with your indulgence, I hear you loud and clear. I'll let the board kind of decide that. But I do want you to know that I'm asked to do things that are not necessarily in the document you had in your hand, I will let your president and the GM know. That's why I hesitate a little bit sometimes on, like CAL FIRE or things of that sort. I've got to find the nexus as well. If not, it's something different, and I just come to the board and talk to you about that. But thus far, it's all kind of led to, I believe, which is a positive story to the Coastal Commission, helps me tell the story, tells them we're working with state parks, we're working for grant funding, we're working on a whole host of things that they have outstanding, in some cases, questions on, and environmental aspects that they have questions on. So those are all things to try to solve early rather than late in the process.
Well, thank you very much for joining us. And,
thank you, Madam Chair. And I've learned not to bring PowerPoints anymore. We have better discussions without it, so I'll come back next meeting without PowerPoint.
Thank you very much. We'll look forward to next time, too. Okay, moving then into public comment, which we do have, and I need to let everyone know about, okay, sorry, thank you. I skipped over that. Okay, agenda review, and then public comment. On agenda review, do you have any items you'd like to pull or comments?
I have an item that I don't want to pull. I don't want to pull it, but when it does come for discussion of the consent agenda, once motioned and seconded, I want to make a comment on 7C.
7C. Okay. Anything else on that? Director Rice?
I have a question on 7D. I don't think it'll require us taking a separate vote on it, but I just had a question on it.
Yeah, and just a clarification when we get there. That seems fine. We wouldn't need to pull it then on that when we go for approval. Okay. Okay, so D and Director Rice. Okay, now, before we move into public comment, just wanted to let everyone know our general manager is, in fact, on a well-deserved vacation today. And so we have then Mr. Carmel will be serving in that seat today, pretty much, but certainly with Mr. Gresham's here too. And so we will move forward then. So we're next into item 5, public comment. And first request today is from Jerry Reed, Jerry Wood on, never mind, he knows. Welcome.
It's Jerry Wood, 1919 Tweed, Cambria. Good afternoon, President Robinette and the board. I've got 2 items that I can cover in the 3 minutes with no problem. I would respectfully request that the board direct its finance staff to conduct an audit which will end in a public report to ensure that all the expenditures of the money that have been collected and will be collected for the fire suppression benefit assessment have been or are being used for the purposes specified in the engineer's report. In that report, there was a specifically earmarked for a new fire engine. The fire engine funding has been funded over the years. It has been defunded over the years, and we still do not have a new fire engine. And I'd just like to ensure that all the money that's collected for those purposes is being spent in the areas designated. I would also like to take this opportunity for the board to vote its approval of the SAFER grant. This would clearly indicate the continued support of the Cambria Fire Department by having the ability to add 3 professional firefighting staff at no cost to the CCSD for 2 years. This would effectively reduce the cost of the expenditures for salaries because for the overtime savings, which is now being all the guys getting moved up, and this would be at no cost for 2 years. Action on both of these items would clearly indicate the board's continued support of the Cambria Fire Department for the benefit of the citizens of Pasadena. And in closing, I am looking forward to the ad hoc committee on the fire department issue for the public meeting so we can have a really good discussion. So we're all well informed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Crosby Schwartz on public comment. No, I'm sorry, that's 9B. Laura is on public comment, item 5. Laura Schwartz. Welcome, Laura.
Hello. Schwartz is a Schwartz. Board and audience, just very briefly, just want to let you know that the Cambria Forest Committee, what we're going to be doing is during our next meeting, we're going to be talking about a Cambria Forest Management District. That's been discussed for probably 15 years now or so. It's never been funded. There's an article, a current article that came out today, thank you, Kathy and Cambrian, that tells a little bit more about it. So everybody is invited to the meeting. And basically, what we're trying to do is a balanced effect of the forest. We're taking out a lot of the dead hazard trees, and we would like to see it reforested and kept for the future. Right now, there's so much cooperation between all the agencies, and this is under an emergency. But the district, a forest district, would be something that's ongoing, and we would know that we wouldn't have to be pulling from all these different agencies and hoping they would work together. We would have a present body to make sure that this happens. So if we have another drought, if we have worse floods or whatever, there'll be some things in place and ongoing, so it won't catch us quite by surprise like this has. So everybody is welcome on August the 12th, 6:30, Rabobank.
Thank you very much. Seeing no further request for public comment under item 5, we'll move now into item 6 and the general manager's report, introduced and shared from Mr. Carmel today.
Thank you, Madam President. I'll be brief, cover the main items in Jerry's report. As Chief Lewin said previously, excuse me, the transition of administrative services at the fire department is going exceedingly well, and wanted to thank the chief and Chief Shalhoub. Staff's closely monitoring all the wells to see exactly when we're going to turn on the emergency water supply. We continue to see significant reductions in nitrates at the wastewater treatment plant from the 40s to the 6 to 8 range, which is remarkable and a wonderful sign. We'll be discussing the blanket tree removal permit on a separate item on the agenda, so we'll defer that discussion. As previously discussed, the EIR for the emergency water supply project for the regular permit is progressing very well. Hope to have it to you soon. Can't give you a specific date, but we are making significant progress. And I'm going to turn it over to Bob at this point to do the engineer report.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Tim. I'll be pretty brief, but you can certainly stop me or ask more questions. Working on a lot of grants lately, as Senator Flores was mentioning. We have a reimbursement request in process with the county on our Prop 84 grant award, which was for the emergency water project. In true engineering fashion, I show a dollar and cent amount. That can change some. I just want you to know it's still in progress. We may end up getting maybe 25% of that amount roughly first, and then the balance later. It's still being resolved at this point. The other grant that we have is one that was called the Public Water System Drought Emergency Response Program grant. I mentioned $307,000. That progress payment is going to go out hopefully after this meeting. I might leave after this to do that request, but that's around $267,000 instead of the $307,000 that I mentioned. I won't talk a lot. We're in the process of doing the Prop 1 grant application on the state's FAST website that they call. Again, that's in process, and I have to do a little bit more work with our finance manager to make sure we're filling out all those various information pages correctly. So again, we're going as fast as we can on that, but it's taken a while. Other miscellaneous type projects that are going on, I'm in the middle of assisting the wastewater operations on trying to get a pipeline cleaned in the plant that's been causing some problems because of the lack of screening equipment. As you may recall, the last meeting had approved the purchase of the influence screen, so that's in progress. We'll be working to get the design of the platform and the installation of that next. The other items we're looking at is how to better assist the operators at the plant. They're doing a great job with very limited resources as far as reducing the nitrates, but we think we could maybe come up with some better baffling of the aeration tank, better circulation of what they call the mixed liquor in the aeration tank to even do better than what they're doing with some interim measures. So we're still investigating that, along with how to fund that. We completed a change order on the emergency water supply project for the
water that goes to the lagoon to make sure it's fully dechlorinated. And there's also an inline aerator that's going to be added to that. And I've been told by CDM Constructors, Inc. that work will occur in August, so it should be completed in August. We continue to work on the Emergency Water Supply Project EIR with Baker International, or RBF. That's more facilitating information exchanges between their project manager and the various people, and some of the documents I have on the project with CDM Smith. And lastly, there's been some coordination on and off, not too much recently, with SLO County on their Energy Watch PG&E funding opportunities. There's a way to fund certain improvements, say, to the wastewater plant or elsewhere, by getting zero interest and taking the savings and kind of offsetting on your power bill. So they had an engineer out maybe a couple months ago now, and we've been going back and forth and exchanging information on that as well. So that pretty much summarizes all I had to say. Unless you have some particular questions, I'd be glad to answer them. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you both for the report. And I see we have no request for public comment. But do we have questions and discussion then from the board? And Director Baringer.
Yes. A couple quick questions. The clarifier number 2, when do you expect that to come back up?
That is online right now.
It is. It's back up.
I believe they want to take the clarifier number 1 down next to put some wear strips in the bottom that did not get done last December when it was undergoing some emergency repairs. So they may have they have them both online. The last I was there, they may take the other one that you saw earlier offline in order to do that fairly soon.
Okay, good. And I also see that you have a GIS consultant. Who's the consultant that you're working with? A GIS consultant is you're working with to do some mapping, valve mapping, allowing track.
Okay, that'd be under water operations. I know that Justin Smith has had some good discussions with Seth Sutherland, who's helped us in the past.
Yeah.
And I'm drawing a blank on his company's name at the moment, but Seth is very familiar with the district and is pretty cost-effective in coming up with solutions that would benefit Justin in developing, in particular, a valve exercising program and some other basic needs that he has right now.
Okay. And this is the first time I've seen this, and I'm excited about it, where it was an ad hoc committee or somehow you have a specific time that you're going to start the EWS. If you have, as soon as we have a zero gradient in San Simeon, it sounds like you're going to restart the EWS. Is that correct? I think it's a brilliant.
Yeah,
at least we have a point. We know exactly when we can do it.
Right. I think the goal is to not create a negative gradient, and that is where the percolated wastewater groundwater table ends up greater than the monitoring well back towards the potable well field. There's an allowance. There's actually some flexibility granted where you can have a negative gradient, provided you do all the intermediate monitoring. But I think the goal is to be conservative here and just want to have it ready to go whenever you get down to about that zero differential, so you're not going to be backing any flow up towards the potable well field. And now that we have the new facility, I know there's some corrective works that Justin is in the middle of doing right now on the project, and some warranty type items, but that's the overall goal.
Yeah, and I think the public should realize that the well water levels are down even more, but they're down every year. If you look at the chart, I believe our well levels are average or above average. And the community has spent a lot of money and effort in having this insurance policy, so to speak. And now that we know that even if we get below 3 feet on the monitoring well for Santa Rosa, we can continue to operate in San Simeon. We won't have a negative gradient. We won't have saltwater intrusion. And I think that we're sitting in a better position now than we were last year. So thanks for the community and and the ratepayers and all of us getting that going. And thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
It's true. If you try to think back a year ago and the conversations we were having, it's very different today in a very good way. Director Rice?
Thank you, President Robinette. Do we have any idea when the grant money is going to come in for the larger, the earworm grant? Let me tell you the reason I'm asking. I know that we had an agreement with the folks that gave us a loan for an early repayment when we get that money, and I don't know if that date can be changed, but as I remember, it was like middle of August, I think it was a year from the day that we got the loan. And so I just want to make sure that if we're not going to get it by then, that we're actually in conversation with the folks that gave us that loan so that we can, and because I'm on the rates committee, this will have a huge effect whether or not we get that and how soon and how we use it will all affect how the rates go. So,
well, we're certainly doing our best to try to get that money as quickly as possible. But there's
no doubt
it is a process, and the county staff, we have a good relationship, and they're doing their due diligence and making sure that we have all the submittals in place that the state requires. There's some question as to how that money will come in. When I first wrote the staff report, I thought maybe it'd all come in one fell swoop and we'd get roughly 95% of our grant, because the state will hold back 5% until you get your final, everything done 100%. And there's a few little reports that still have to be written. So the dollar amount I listed was 95% of the total grant amount. Now, that may get broken apart into two payments possibly. For example, the engineering, planning, environmental may come to about a quarter of that amount, and that may get paid first. So maybe instead of $4 million, it's a little less of $1 million that comes in. That would maybe be 30 to 60 days out, at kind of 30 being sort of the rosy picture, 60 being maybe a little more realistic. And maybe the remainder might be a second payment, or it might come in all around the 60-day period. But I can't crystal ball at this point in time, but that's the best information I have on it.
And you probably don't have any idea about the talks with the folks that gave us the loan for that early payback, and there was like a small penalty, but not as bad as if we weren't able to get it in. So I just want to make that's going to affect the work that we do in the rates ad hoc committee, and will affect how much folks are paying. So I just want to, is the county aware that we have this ability to pay back a certain amount because of this grant, or we?
I don't think they're involved in that level of detail with our finances. I mean, we could certainly.
Maybe they would expedite if they knew that we were trying to. There was a reason why we were trying to get it more quickly. Is kind of all I'm thinking. But maybe it's possible that we can work with the folks that we got the loan from, and I just don't. I know that we don't have the people here to answer that question. So.
Yeah, I know the county staff is doing their best to try to push this along, and
great.
It's like I said, it's a process, and we have to make sure we've completed all the due diligence requirements that are involved with that.
Okay, 3 real brief other issues. I know we've got the urban water management plan deadline starting to come up here soon, and I know that you don't have anything on your plate right now. You're so completely free of your time is so completely available. You're kind of tracking that somewhere in your calendar, yes?
Thank you for reminding me. I remember writing the last one on the kitchen table at home, so I'm trying to avoid doing that this year, and hopefully we can contract that out and find some funds for it. Okay. But yes, that's definitely a requirement that we need to follow up on. Hopefully have something by the end of the year.
Especially
they do
since
tie
the
to
state
grants.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been using the fact that we have one from the last 5-year period that's still been approved by the state. So that's what we've hung our hat on with all the
and hopefully
the
it
recent
won't
grants.
have to change much. We only put in a giant new plant, so it won't have to be changed too much. The closed circuit videoing of the collection system, I know, is part of our sanitary plan that we have, and part of the agreement, I believe, with the for the overflows before. And I know we've only done 20%. We're supposed to do 20% each year. because of the last year and the emergency water treatment plant and all of us focusing on that, we didn't do anything last year. Are there plans? I didn't see anything in the budget. Are there plans to continue that forward?
You know, I'd have to get back to you with an accurate
Perfectly
answer to that.
fine.
I know what you're saying. I agree with it being done, but I
Good.
can't recall enough detail from the wastewater budget to
That's
know
fine. And I'm sorry I
what
didn't get
happened
these
there, but
ahead.
you're
I would
right
have
on
got these
track.
to you ahead of time. I
No,
just didn't have a chance
I
to.
appreciate you bringing it up because it's something we want to stay on top of. And you know, I know with the conservation revenues went down, so I don't know how that all balanced out without having Patrick here and Jerry here and
Absolutely.
Orlando here to really get into
Absolutely.
that detail with you. But
And the last
glad
one
God
you
to
made,
come back.
the last question is something you also may not know about, but I'm only just asking so that it's out there. We had talked about hydrants and doing some cleaning out of, I don't know if any of that program has, if we've gotten anywhere on that, but with the recent rain, it seems like might not be a bad time to be checking the hydrants in those spots where it would help to exercise them. So I don't know if that program has gone anywhere yet.
Yeah, and I don't have those details. I'll be glad to get
That's
back
fine.
to you
I'll
at
ask
the
in
next
August.
meeting on that. So.
I'll ask in August.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. You're welcome.
Director Thompson?
Thank you, President Robinette. 2 points actually that were raised by Mr. Wood during public comment. One had to do with the fire assessment. I would be interested in hearing from our finance person as to the status of that fund. I haven't been following it over the last number of years, and so I'd be interested to get an update on that particular program. Secondly, on the SAFER grant, that's something that I think Mr. Clift and I were talking about taking up with the ad hoc committee to evaluate fire prevention and service options from several standpoints. Firstly, the grant was submitted without going through an approval process, and so we have to determine whether or not you know, the policy option of accepting it. And then secondly, it was submitted with a shortfall of something like $200,000, which was something that we would also have to look at in terms of whether or not it would be something we would want to move forward on. So I think that's one of the things that we would take up early on in our discussions with the ad hoc committee, and along with the process of submitting grant applications. I think there's a need to have a policy. I was in charge of Los Angeles' $400 million criminal justice grant program, and I know we had a very specific process for submitting applications and approving them through the City Council. And so I think we need to ensure that we have such a process here for any kind of grant applications. And so, again, we'll take that up with the committee.
Okay, any further comments? Vice President Cliff?
Are we into 6B ad hoc committees or?
Not quite.
Okay.
We're getting close. Okay, no other comments then on 6A. All right, on item 6B, first of all, I see no requests for public comment, so we'll move forward with ad hoc committee reports and any other related committee reports. And so who would like to go? Okay, let's see. We started over here last time. We'll start over here with you then, Vice President Cliff.
Okay, pass those down and on to the stuff. The ad hoc committee on fire, Director Thompson and I met to develop a methodology of what we were going to do. This is what's come out of that. And we're proposing that we have 2 workshops that are public concern workshops, where we will simply have a workshop during the day and then a workshop in the evening, so that people can express what they expect from their fire department. We're of the belief that you got to have a starting position, and the starting position might be to listen to I shouldn't say might be, should be, to listen to the community and say, what do you expect? What do you expect your fire department to do? And that leads into some other questions about what amount of money are you willing to pay to get that done, and some of those things. We would follow that up, and right now we have a tentative dates of August 31st at 1 p.m. and September 1st at 6 p.m. for those, September 3rd? September 3rd, excuse me. And those are tentative because each date we seem to pick up, somebody else has the Veterans Hall for dancing or whatever. The Veterans Hall is very, it seems to be, have a lot of activities. So we would have those two meetings, and those meetings would be a listening meeting where they would be basically open to the public comment. Questions I would expect from the committee to be more questions of clarification of the comments rather than some kind of presenting any kind of options. We would follow that up with after we review all those and kind of get them in some kind of order, we would expect to have a meeting which would be open to the public, in which we would do some prioritization of what is expected. And then another workshop that would be prior to board presentation, have some kind of a public workshop to review what the committee's initial findings are. So those would be wide open public workshops. We're proposing several meetings with groups or individuals to obtain additional information. Those meetings may or may not be public depending on the people that we're meeting with. Some people would have no objection to that of being public. Some might feel that my past experience in this kind of thing is that sometimes people will reveal things in an individual discussion that they wouldn't necessarily reveal in public, and so it gives us both opportunities. We're trying to meet with all of the different groups that could be involved, which would be our own firefighters, their union, CAL FIRE, the administrative staff of CCSD in terms of resources and those kinds of things, and we'll meet with all of them. I've put down kind of a schedule, and we're looking at about a 5-month process here. And the last paragraph gives you the kind of the public opportunities of the 2 public workshops for concerns and expectations, 1 workshop for prioritizing concerns and expectations, 1 workshop to review initial findings. There would be public comment at board meeting when initial findings are presented to this board, and public comment at the board meetings when final report is presented. We would assume that an initial report would be presented and then taking what public comment and board comment and come back then with some form of a final report. And then there could be other potential public comments at other additional, I would assume that during public comment over the next 4 or 5 months we will have public comment on what we're doing. And also, as I indicated, some of the meetings that we're talking about could be public based on the individuals we're meeting with. And so that's the methodology that we want to use. And if you have additions to that, I don't expect you to necessarily think of them today, but to forward them to the committee, and then we can go on from there.
Thank you.
And I guess we have a copy for Kathy. Right here.
Director Thompson.
Part of the deliberation also, I think that Director Clift didn't mention, is that we would also want to meet with the communities that have contracted with CAL FIRE, and then perhaps also with communities that chose not to contract or withdrew from a contract with CAL FIRE, to get kind of a sense as to what the prevailing issues are in that regards. We also, and again, it's my thought, and it's not something that we've had any direct comment on, is that at some point in time to get a sense of the community's support one way or the other, either through an information report included with the billing, and get a sense as to where the community is coming from on this issue. I've gotten feedback on both sides, frankly, and feedback from people that I really respect. So it's really a hot button issue in the community, and I really want to get a sense as to the level of community support one way or the other on this.
One of the, in the middle section there, since I don't have my copy anymore, no, that's fine, was that providing some kind of a questionnaire survey or something to the community through our billing process, so that people who couldn't make the meetings or didn't know or something like that would have some input too. So that's one of the additional input areas that we're talking about. So hopefully we get input from anybody who would be affected, and then bring to you those findings.
Well, I would have to say I think you have both put a lot of time into thinking about this and really wanting to do a very comprehensive outreach, which is, of course, I think the only way and the right way for us to really get a sense of our community. And I think it will be, it will be a process, I think, where people together as a community, that we learn a lot together, too, regarding the whole purpose of the work you're doing. Any comments? Yes, Director Barringer?
Yeah, no additional comments on that. I think it's a great plan, but I did have, when it comes to me, I had a comment about the fire safe meeting I went to. Are we ready for that? Or are we?
Okay, are we ready to move on, or did you want to comment on the ad hoc report?
The ad hoc report, please.
Okay, then we'll come back over to that other report.
Thank you, President Robinette. I thank you so much. This is an important issue. Thank you for putting in the work already on this work plan. And I don't know if it needs to necessarily be approved or ratified or whatever by the full board, but I feel my confidence level was already high that this was going to get appropriately addressed, and I think this is just another
And my assumption is that every regular meeting, we will make a progress report to the board.
And I very much appreciate that. Yeah. It's a good public process, and I appreciate it. I know that you already know that I'm going to ask and make sure that you have some of these, at least one or two of these in the evening. I don't know if you've looked at time yet. Okay, so thank you very much, and I appreciate the work you're putting in. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So other reports then, sure. Director Barringer?
I went to the Fire Safe Council meeting yesterday, and
thank you.
I also noticed in the paper that they talk about the local hazard mitigation plan that the CCSD needs to apply for. And I read on that the general manager, he'll ask the board of directors to consider authorizing preparation of the plan next month. But since he's not here, it is so urgent that we do get a local hazard mitigation plan going. I hope I can use this opportunity for us to direct the general manager to start developing a local hazard mitigation plan, because it's critical for FEMA funding. And if we have that plan in place, if we were to have a fire next month, if we had the plan in place already, then we could get FEMA funding. Otherwise, we can't. So, or it's not as easy. So anyway, using this, can we have a consensus that we're going to direct the general manager to start developing a local hazard mitigation plan?
And I would say to that too, and then we'll also hear from Mr. Carmel on this. Can we do it? Certainly, I think there's been clearly an awareness created on the local hazardous mitigation plan that somehow has not been before the board or discussed, it seems, previously. But what I see as the benefit is it's here now, and it's clearly something I think that we all have an interest in one way or the other. And I attended the CERT meeting the other night. This kind of goes along with another report. And they were also very interested in what we were going to do. And I, not representing the board, but just preliminary discussions with the general manager before he left, he was certainly very much focused on it too. So I did tell CERT the other night that while I'm not speaking for the board, certainly moving forward and is something that is in its budding process. I think, no question. I think it would be much better if we had full board support, if we could do it at this time, or, as was mentioned, do we need to bring it back next month?
There's not a sufficient agenda description to provide that kind of direction.
Okay.
I know Jerry's working on it, and I certainly will make it clear your comments today, but we can bring it back as a formal item.
Okay.
But
he doesn't have to wait for us to, I mean, he can make an application. One thing that's important too is that when I was at the fire safe meeting, they were saying, well, you can't really do a local hazard mitigation plan because you have to have funding first, but we do already have funding because we have the fire assessment that we've had on the books for 10 years. So we can move forward with this local hazard mitigation plan. We don't have to wait for anything.
There's a lot of information and misinformation, I think, just under informal discussion out there at this point. But I think there's no question, and while we can't necessarily do a vote, I get a sense that we're all wanting to do it and do it right.
I would think that at our agenda item
11. Yeah, you can add it specifically.
Future agenda item, we can by agreement direct the general manager to proceed forward in bringing something at the next meeting.
Yeah, I think when we get to
that's
that,
kind of giving him the notice that they want him to do something.
So I think when we get to that part of the meeting today, that's one that we'll make sure we come back to and include that. Okay. Other reports, Director Thompson?
Yes, thank you, President Robinette. I attended the board meeting of the Friends of Fiscal Lini Ranch Preserve, and there are a couple items just to report on. Firstly, the kitchen tour is this Saturday, and it is completely sold out.
Yes, it is.
They sold some 400 tickets, and so it should be a rousing tour, and it's always well received and brings a lot of folks into town also, and the Chamber of Commerce will be happy about that. A couple items also, they, and where is it now? I had it right here. Well, they approved in principle the notion of, for public safety purposes, having increased cell towers in town, including on the ranch. So that's, I wish I could find their specific motion. Here we go. Okay. They approved a motion to support in principle that Cambria have sufficient cell phone coverage, including the ranch. And that was approved unanimously. And then finally, a couple other things. Over the 4th of July weekend, they set up information kiosks outside of the ranch, and they also had merchandise for sale, which raised, during that period, a little over $1,350. And then they plan on doing this again on Labor Day weekend. And that's basically their report.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Okay, we're over back to Mr.
I just want to add one thing,
comment?
if you don't mind. At the Fire Safe Council, too, they were talking about increased cell phone coverage, but they aren't using the word cell tower because that technology is not required. There's you can have repeaters that would serve a community like ours, where we could just, if it's if it's the ranch needs some coverage, they were talking about cows, but they can just put a small unit on a telephone pole, and it would, for fire safety, it's the right thing to do. It's not so much what coverage you have after a fire, it's the coverage that when someone, if they were walking on the ranch, for instance, and they saw a fire, they could call and report it and maybe prevent the expansion of that fire. So it's a health and safety issue, and yes, some people might be able to actually make phone calls on Moonstone Beach. But in fact, I was at the fire department. I didn't get any cell coverage there, so it's kind of it's pretty important to have in this community.
It seems to be a conversation that has come back. We haven't talked about it for a while, but I know at the previous Fire Focus meeting too, they have been talking about it. Now talking about it with Fiscalini Ranch, and it is a health and safety issue, I believe, because when you're out on the ranch for a while, I thought that we were going to have this possibility of the search and rescue type thing if someone actually had like a health issue or something while they were out on the ranch on one of those trails, that they could actually be with their cell phone. If there was, of course, signal, they could be tracked down so that we could have emergency services find them really, really fast. So it seems like several groups are talking about it now, and so I don't know exactly who the right group is to pursue it, but it would be certainly a real, I think, a safety and health benefit to the district if we had better cell coverage than we have. No question about it.
One question.
Yes.
Procedurally, do we have to modify the forest management plan because they're specifically excluded? Unless it's, or would it fall outside of the category of a facility or a servicing ability? Because the forest management plan doesn't allow, and their covenants, the covenant, the thing doesn't allow vehicles on the ranch except emergency vehicles. So servicing could be a problem. And secondly, the kind of facilities that were necessary when you talked about a tower were specifically excluded. So hopefully what they're doing is requesting procedurally so that we can do all these things.
Yeah, I think that's basically what they had in mind. Again, they supported, in principle, the notion of having sufficient cell phone coverage. And I suppose if you had the portable devices on telephone poles and Marine Terrace, that would provide coverage. I know that right now there's nothing in Marine Terrace. So I would think that anything like that, either that or on the other, on the north end of the ranch, would be helpful.
I would just ask the district council to research it so that we know what we have to do to get. I'm all for it. I just want to make sure we do it procedurally correct and don't get someone coming up out of the woodwork and saying you can't do that.
Okay, any further comments, or are we ready to move on? Director Rice?
Just a request, if it would be okay with, if we could get a consensus on the board. Since Monique coordinates the ad hoc committee meetings, at least some of them, I don't know if she does all of them, it would be nice to get a list of which committees met in the prior month, like as part of the staff report, at least the ones that met with staff. It just would be kind of, well, from my behalf, it would be kind of nice thing to have to know which committees met during that month. Because I know going back through prior agendas, it's kind of nice to be able to see what kind of activities, because we don't provide always, this is like spectacular written report, super spectacular, love it. But the ad hoc committees don't always provide such, and it would be nice. I don't know if that's.
Comments?
I don't always know when they meet. I only know when I coordinate when they meet.
When
they meet with staff,
right? So
right.
Then I would say when it's that was the note that I had, when they meet with staff. It just would be. I mean, if it's okay, if that sounds like something that would be okay with the board. I don't want to put extra work on the staff that doesn't need to be.
And I think from time to time in the general manager's report, we'll see, staff met with, water permitting ad hoc or whichever ad hoc. So
It'd be nice to have
is
it
good
regular.
To have a heads up, yeah. Okay, then I think we are ready to move on from any reports, and we're ready to move to the consent agenda. And let's do that, and then I think we're ready for a break. So we'll finish with the consent agenda and take a quick break after that.
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
I was going to mention that too. We don't have any requests for public comment on that, but thank you. And also, I believe that someone had said, Director Rice, you said you had just a clarification or something, and you too. All right, we could do it either way. We can do discussion before, or we can do it after.
Okay, I just wanted to, the only comment I had is that last meeting, we had a 6-hour meeting, and everyone was staying and very dutifully for item 9F. But what many people missed is there was an item 9C where the board clearly supported our firefighters by ratifying a memorandum of understanding between the Cambria Community Services District and the IAFF. And no public comment, no comment from the board, but I think that the public tends to think that, we're going with CAL FIRE when in fact it's very clear that we were supporting our firefighters just a few items prior to 9F. So just wanted to comment that.
Yes, it was in fact quite an important support. And okay, any other comments before we're ready for the motion? Director Rice?
So I just had a question on 7D about the reimbursement, and I just was kind of confused because I thought when I had talked to Chief Miller at the public open house that they had at the fire station, he said there wasn't any reimbursement back and forth for the mutual aid, but maybe this is a different program. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Rice, for the question. So the item 7D before you is a resolution that the State Office of Emergency Services is requiring for reimbursement. The reimbursement is for, as part of an agreement called the California Fire Assistance Agreement. It's an agreement between the wildland fire agencies, National Park Service, U.S. Forest Service, BLM, BIA, and Fish and Wildlife Service, and CAL FIRE, and local government fire departments. This resolution allows your agency to continue to receive reimbursement for response to fires. Major wildland fires is the greatest example of that. So this is a requirement that they established this year as part of that CFAA agreement. You are correct in that if a unit responds in this county for less than 12 hours, they are not reimbursed. That's just mutual aid. Okay.
Thank you.
And sorry.
Vice President Cliff?
Would as an example, with our tanker going to Santa Margarita fire, if it was there for more than 12 hours, we'd have the right for reimbursement? Is that the kind of thing, or does that have to be outside of the kind of the county area?
If the response is to a wildland fire and they're there for 12 hours and 1 minute, they get all 12 hours and then continue to get paid. Right. I don't know exactly on this one. I can easily research it. But I'm assuming they were paid for 12 hours.
That's the kind of thing that we could get reimbursement on.
And I think you are on this particular incident.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you can answer this because you were providing the service very recently. If I thought our firefighters and equipment generally doesn't go out of the area anyway, and so that's why I was kind of confused why this was coming up, because it doesn't. I don't know. Maybe we do when there's a major. Do you know anything?
You're
about
right.
that?
Currently, the Cambria Community Service District Fire Department has not been sending out resources as part of strike teams out of county. They do respond to wildland fires in the county, and those responses are reimbursed as well after 12 hours. Certainly one of the goals, and I saw this in the strategic plan, and I think it may be a goal that we should all be looking at, is to change that so that those firefighters are responding out of the county. The reason I say that is the money is reimbursed, so the expense isn't to the district. But what it does, it provides opportunities for the firefighters to get more experience. And more important, it means that you're part of a greater system so that if Cambria does experience a major fire, you will also reap the benefits of other fire departments that are also contributing to that fight.
Okay, and this isn't a new thing. I'm assuming this is just a normal state thing that we have to do every year.
Yes, every fire department had to do it.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate the clarifications.
Okay, thank you. No further discussion, it appears. So are we ready for the motion? Director Ballringer?
I move we approve the consent agenda.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Ready for the question? This one I think we can just do with a voice vote on the consent agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously, 5-0. And what? You want to just push on? Kathy? Are you Okay, I don't think we have much to go. So, all right, we will. This will be a record time, possibly, and possibly not. We'll see what we can do with it. Yes. Okay, then we'll go ahead and move to the item 8, hearings and appeals, and this will be introduced by Mr. Carmel.
Thank you, Madam President. This is an item that we see annually. It's collection of delinquent solid waste and disposal charges. It requires a public hearing so that anyone on the itemized list that's attached to the resolution can protest or object. At the close of the public hearing, you would make any modifications you deem necessary or appropriate to the resolution, and then it's requested that you adopt that resolution, which we'll forward on to the county tax collector. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Okay, let's then officially have the public hearing is now open. I see no request for public comment, and so I'm going to close the public hearing. And so discussion from the board.
Just one point of clarification. Somebody asked me who pays to pick up the Main Street trash. Is that a freebie, or how does that work?
Okay, so Main Street trash is complimentary. That's good.
Yeah. Right. Everybody.
Mr. Carmel?
Yeah, that is gratuitous. The garbage company does do that on our behalf for free.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Are we ready for a motion?
I would move adoption of Resolution 28215, confirming the itemized report to collect delinquent solid waste collection and disposal charges on the county tax rolls.
I'll second that.
All right, it's been moved by Vice President Clift and seconded by Director Ballringer that we approve this. Any further discussion? Okay, roll call vote.
Vice President Cliff?
Yes.
Director Berenger?
Aye.
Director Thompson?
Aye.
Director Rice?
Aye.
President Robinette?
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. Okay, well, I think you're right. We'll just keep right on here. We are now into item 9, and so item 9A will be introduced by Mr. Carmel.
Thank you, Madam President. This is an item to consider casting a vote for one of 3 candidates for the California Special District Association Board of Directors. It's recommended that you pick a candidate and authorize the board president to execute the ballot, and we'll forward it on to CSDA. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
All right, thank you. Again, we have no public comment requested on this item. And so discussion. Director Thompson.
Since I don't know any of these folks on here, I would either ask Vice President Cliff for his recommendation or go with the local person from Napomo, just to support
And
local guy.
thank you. And Vice President Cliff, do you have anything to share with us?
I do know Dr. Blair. He's been involved with Napomo CSD, and he's been involved with the CSD board in the past. And I would also describe him as an individual who is not shy in making his position known. And so not knowing the other two, he would probably be what I will describe as an active representative.
Any other comments or discussion before a motion? Director Rice?
I just was going to make a motion.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
She was going to make a motion.
Oh, okay. No further discussion then? Please do.
I move that the CCSD vote for Dr. Robert Bob Blair for the Coastal Network Seat A of the CSDA Board of Directors and authorize the board president to execute the ballot on behalf of the CCSD.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded, and no discussion. Continuing. So let's do roll call.
Aye.
Vice President Cliff?
Aye.
Director Thompson?
Aye.
Director Berenger?
Aye.
President Robinette?
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. Okay. Now we are on item 9B. And so introduction by Mr. Carmel.
I have a quick question. I'm sorry, President
Yes.
Robinette. I just want to make sure if Jerry's not going to be back before the 7th, because the deadline's the 7th, this will get executed, yes? Okay. I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, it's the board president that'll end up executing.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, back to then 9B and introduction of the item. Mr. Carmel.
Thank you again, Madam President. This is an item to consider accepting an emergency tree removal permit from the County of San Luis Obispo. The board has discussed this item several times. Staff was directed to work with county staff to develop an application and to seek an emergency permit. We've done so. Before we get too far into it, I wanted to thank the County Planning Department for their great work. We have Matt Jansen and Erilyn Singwall both here. I worked with them to develop this permit. They were gracious and responsive and reasonable, and those are qualities we sometimes don't see. But they've been fantastic to work with. So you have the permit before you. It has 8 conditions. Be glad to answer any questions with regard to the conditions. In addition to the permit itself, you'll see appended to the permit and actually incorporated into it by reference is a document entitled Dead Tree Removal Emergency Permit Agreement and Waiver of Liability. And that document would be executed by the property owner who's seeking to remove trees and seeking the benefit of the permit. By the way, the permit waives all fees and essentially provides a very expeditious process to remove trees. But that agreement will shift the burden of the conditions, most of the conditions, to the property owner. It includes a waiver of liability and an assumption of risk clause, requires the property owner to provide insurance for the activity. So that would be executed for anyone who actually wants the permit. They'd have to come to the district and get the permit, sign the agreement, and then they'd be able to very quickly obtain a contractor to remove their trees. So if you were to pursue and accept the permit, that's the effect of it. You know, we do have county reps here, as indicated. They can certainly answer any of the difficult questions associated with the conditions. And there are some fairly onerous conditions that I know the board will be anxious to look at and discuss. But why don't we leave it there and turn it back to the board for any questions.
Thank you. And I also would like to welcome and truly gracious and very responsive and cooperative members of the county staff, Mr. Matt Jansen and Arlene Singwald. In the introduction, did you wish to speak to anything in the introduction or okay? All right, very good. So then when we get to that part, thank you very much for being here. Okay, then let's start with public comment. We do have a request for public comment. And that would be now Mr. Schwartz's turn. Crosby for 9B.
Thank you, President Robinette and the board. I have a couple items here. First is a question. Does this emergency permit apply to larger projects such as the one that's about to get underway on the Fiscalini Ranch Preserve? They have identified 190 dead trees to be removed there, and they're waiting for the permit approval for that. Does this blanket permit cover that kind of activity? That's one question. I have a suggestion that the tree removal agreement be revised to include the number and type of trees that are being removed. There's a monthly reporting requirement to the county, and if you had this information on the agreement, that would be helpful. The county form that they've used before for tree removals also has just some guidelines, the county guidelines for tree replacement, so that it's right there in front of the property owner, and he can see what his obligations are going to be. I recommend that also be added on to the agreement form. Now, in some cases, the property owner may be willing to immediately plant replacement trees, and I think that should be allowed and not have them be required to wait for the tree replanting plan and the regular coastal development permit to be approved. I think they could, if they are willing to, they could plant trees this fall or whenever it's appropriate. And the final thing is, would be a question, this may be to the county, but and on item 6, which talks about the tree replacement plan, the last sentence says this condition may be satisfied by submittal of the required tree replacement plan and foregoing information by individual property owners removing trees. I don't understand whether that requires the individual property owners to submit this information, or if it has to be just submitted from CCSD to the county. It's not clearly written, and I think you should clarify that, because it may impose a requirement on the individual property owners. That's my comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And some of those may be answered during discussion here too. So let's move then to discussion before the motion. Anyone? Vice President Cliff?
Since no one else wanted to take off on it there real quickly, I'll express my opinion and what I think might be acceptable. First of all, I think you all know that my opinion is that this is a county ordinance. It's a county ordinance that they're asking us to enforce, and it's a county ordinance that puts us in a position that might be untenable. I understand the potential savings to the individual policyholders, or excuse me, haven't been retired long enough, individual landowners, but the overall potential to the CCSD could be considerably greater. And even though there's a hold harmless agreement that the landowner is being asked to sign, that doesn't protect suits or potential agency upgrades that come against the CCSD. The individual lot owner is not going to reimburse CCSD for lawsuits against CCSD for the overall permit rather than just their individual activities. So in looking at it, my first position is this is the county that has a tree ordinance that works real well when they have 1 or 2 trees that are being requested to be removed. But I don't think they thought about the situation that's involved here, and I think they're running really away from their own ordinance. They are asking us to enforce it, and condition 6 says that we have to lay out the plan. Condition 7 says that we have to report to them on a monthly basis, and reporting is really a matter of our people doing a lot of legwork. There's nowhere in this agreement for any kind of reimbursement to CCSD for the activities that we're required to do. And condition number 8 is absolutely unacceptable. And I call your attention to our situation that we're in right now relative to the emergency water treatment plant, where we've already spent more than $100,000 in lawsuit costs, including defending the county, because in that emergency permit and in the requiring the regular permit, they required a hold harmless. And I can understand that, because that hold harmless protects them against activities that we really want to do. But this isn't activities that we really want to do. This is activities they want us to do for them. And it's activities that I don't think we really have a legal obligation to do, and because we don't have the right to enforce land ordinances. So I could say this. I could say 2 conditions and a kind of a statement. I could accept us going ahead with getting this permit if condition number 7, I'll pass these off. I've been busy. I got a new word processing program, so I have to.
Now he's doing it.
It might be acceptable if condition number 7 was changed to the applicant shall submit a copy of the permit issued to individuals with the CAL FIRE certification to the Department of Planning and Building describing the number and location of trees approved for removal. In other words, if we were issuing the permits for them and we have justification from CAL FIRE for those particular trees, we simply staple those together and send them to the county, and the county has the obligation of keeping track and following up. It's not our duty to keep track of how many people take advantage of their ordinance, or whether they actually follow up with the tree planting and that kind of thing. And condition number 8, absolutely eliminated. And then I would like this board, in its approval, if it accepted those 2 conditions, to go forward with the understanding that if the regular permit is appealed above the County of San Luis Obispo level, CCSD discontinue any further pursuit of the regular permit. We walk away. Because if we get into the game with the Coastal Commission and county and courts, I don't know that you want to, I don't want to expose CCSD to those kinds of financial concerns. So I don't like it in the first place, but I will go with it if those kinds of conditions were met. And that's basically my position.
Okay, Director Blaringer.
Yeah, I've got, I agree with Director Clift, is that we're not in the land use business. If you look at number 6, D, it says that we're going to have to enforce the replanting of trees. I don't mind doing that, but we're not in the business of doing that. The county doesn't even send somebody out to check. So as before, I wanted to see if we can get an applicant, like somebody like maybe the Forest Committee or Green Space or somebody to be the applicant. I think it would work better. But nonetheless, I do know I've had several conversations with Mr. Carmel, And I think that he's been negotiating in good faith with the county, and I think the county's doing a good job. It's just that we're not in that business. There's another thing, too, that I'd like to bring to your review is that a follow-up coastal development permit is required as a condition of this, which is okay. I mean, the Coastal Commission we shouldn't fear them. They're good people. And they will be very cooperative in something like this. I think that's almost a no-brainer. But we have to review CEQA. And I don't know what kind of costs that's going to, what kind of costs will we incur by going through the CEQA process. It's appropriate, but why should we have that cost? So, but again, I would like to look back to Mr. Carmel, if he could comment a little bit on because I know the county's gone a long way, and you've been working with them. So, what are your concerns, if they remain?
Well, with regard to the bigger issue, which appears to be the regular coastal development permit, there's really no obligation that we accept that permit, and that may seem like we're acting in bad faith, but we're not. That requirement comes in their code. It's a part of their emergency permit ordinance that a person or an entity issued an emergency permit follows up with a regular permit application within 30 days. The actual processing of that, as we know from other projects, the processing of the regular application can sometimes take a long time, and admittedly there's usually coordination at the county level with the Coastal Commission, so normally the conditions reflect, at least to a certain extent, and you can verify this with staff, Coastal Commission input, although certainly it can be appealed and expanded. But again, we can get and I have no opinion in this, but we can get the benefit of the emergency permit without necessarily accepting the regular permit. So with regard to that issue, I think it can be silenced pretty quickly. The other issues, I mean, they're all very legitimate. The indemnification provision is troublesome. We tried to get them to delete it, and this is what we got back. It's actually, it's been loosened up significantly, although it still bears a significant burden. It only relates to our negligence and willful misconduct, but nevertheless, that sort of opens the Pandora's box anyway. So I don't necessarily disagree with that analysis. With regard to some of the other comments, first, I think you should solicit input from county staff, because I think they're going to be quite reasonable in how we choose to report. At least in discussions with county staff, that's what I've heard. It could be virtually anything, and they don't define how we have to report that. And I think the mechanism that you show here is going to be acceptable to them. And then, with regard to the bigger issue, and that is all of these conditions are substantively transferred in the dead tree permit agreement and limitation on liability agreement. They're shifted to the property owner specifically. Now, that doesn't mean that they're going to meet the letter of the condition. There may be some give and take, but I think most of those issues, including the replacement plan, are now the property owner's responsibility via the agreement itself. So I think most of these issues can be overcome. The indemnity provision not, unless it's deleted. But again, I think it's probably wise that we get into some sort of a dialogue with Matt or Erilyn, because I think most of these issues can probably be resolved.
Well, and thank you for that. And also the clarification, I think, is certainly very insightful, that this is like a truly an urgent emergency issue, and it might never come to be that we would go through the whole process, because we're talking about right now. And Matt, just before you speak, if I could, I appreciate all the work that both Mr. Carmel and Mr. Jansen have been engaged in on trying to resolve and just try to help. The other thing that's interesting to me is when we had our report earlier about we're talking just residential. We are not talking about the trees on the ranch and other trees. And anyway, the part that talks about the responsibility for the tree removal seems to be just for residential. If it is, then again, I come back to certainly we want to get this resolved, but according to our report from CAL FIRE's inspections, we are talking about every property owner counts, but we are talking about not that big an impact on trees in this community. Would you want to, you look like you would respond. Go ahead.
No, I don't have any response to that, but I did want to indicate that this permit would apply to us and would, in fact, give us the benefit of removing trees from the ranch.
Okay, so it would then, and that answers one of the questions too, this would extend into the ranch. And Mr. Jensen, it's wonderful to see you, and it's time to hear from you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good afternoon, President Robinette. Good to see you.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see all of you. And Kathy, always good to see you. It's been a long time. I appreciate you getting me out of the office, even if it's for this difficult subject. It's been a long time since I've been to Cambria, which is just wrong. Yeah, it's been a pleasure to work with Mr. Carmel. He's a nice guy for a lawyer. And it's not my intent to jam this permit down your throat. My intent today is to answer any questions that you have. And I think I need to start with some baseline things about the difference between what happens on individual properties and what we're talking about here. So starting with, and I'd like to get to some of Director Cliff's suggestions, because I think those are constructive and I appreciate you putting those out there. I think there's some flexibility there. I know there's some flexibility on most of those. And to cut to the chase, I unfortunately I can't grant you much flexibility on number 8. But if we can work with the other ones, maybe we can get somewhere. So what happens today, if somebody wants to remove a dead tree or a hazardous tree on their property, is they come to the county and they can remove up to 3 trees with something called a land use authorization. It is not a permit. And that's important that you recognize that distinction, because the Coastal Commission recognizes that distinction. So you can remove up to 3 trees for $126. You can increase that to 6 dead or hazardous trees for an additional $23 each, or up to a total of $195. That's the process we've had for the whole time I've worked at the county, 25 years. So that requires an arborist review to verify that that tree is dead or hazardous, and we have criteria for them to meet that. Those are not permits. Those are what we call land use authorizations. Obviously, what's different here is there's a giant chunk of the forest that's dead or dying. I saw a huge difference just driving up today. I didn't realize how different it would look to me. And this permit, clearly, this project qualifies for an emergency. And as Mr. Carmel referred to, every emergency permit requires that if a regular coastal development permit is necessary, you have to follow up on it. But let's talk about that just for a second. So if somebody wants to build a seawall in front of their house, and they call us, and the planning director issues the emergency permit, quite frankly, the planning director can do that over the phone if they feel it necessary, then we know exactly what that project is. The contractor can give us a drawing, they can give us the volume of the number of rocks they dumped, we can go out and take pictures. It's easy to define that project, and so therefore it's easy to create a project description for the follow-up permit. Your desal plant is very similar to that. You knew exactly what that project description was, and so the follow-up permit application was fairly straightforward once you worked through all of the, I probably shouldn't call it desal, your emergency water supply system, is that what you call it? Your EWS, sorry. This project, where we're calling up to 1,000 trees to be removed over 3 years, is not that kind of project. We don't know what the ultimate project description is going to be. So therefore, we're flexible on when that regular permit application comes in. We're very flexible. And the Coastal Commission, more importantly, is flexible. We've had this conversation with them, and they agree that the time, even though we have to put in the conditions the 30-day trigger, because that's right out of the ordinance, we can't change that. They agree that the timing of the regular permit is completely dependent on what we learn about this ever-evolving project. To be quite frank about the whole situation, the Coastal Commission blessed an emergency permit for dead oak trees removed in Monterey County 7 years ago, and there was never a follow-up permit. Now, I'm not guaranteeing that there won't be one on yours, but because that project description continued to evolve, they felt like the emergency permit covered all the conditions and they didn't need it in the end. So this is different than the emergency water supply project. This is different than a seawall, and therefore it allows us considerable amount of flexibility. Just kind of randomly going through things in my head here. Talking about this reporting condition, we are willing to be as flexible as you need us to be on that. And quite frankly, we feel that since CAL FIRE, who's now going to be your local fire agency, as I understand it.
Management at this time.
Yes. Since they're going to be on many of these properties already, either as part of the initial survey or as part of follow-up inspections, they're going to be keeping track of the trees removed. So we don't, I appreciate Director Cliff's comments, but we don't really see, and we would hope not, that CCSD staff would have much to do at all. We plan on CAL FIRE submitting these reports to us. We have to say the applicant because you are the applicant. Mr. Lewin sitting behind me knows full well that 3 months ago the county was pushing for CAL FIRE to be the applicant. They chose not to, and I know they have good reasons for that. But all we're trying to do here, honestly, is convert individual land use authorizations, which take a long time to process, into an emergency permit that the Coastal Commission will ultimately be a lot happier with when we're talking about 1,000 trees removed out of your forest. They will not be happy with hundreds of individual land use authorizations. And they will eventually come down on us, and they will eventually stop all the permit removal, and that doesn't do your community much good. Did you have a question?
Well, I think that's a supposition. Because I don't think they can necessarily do that arbitrarily, but why isn't it possible for your department to come up here once a week and issue permits and use CAL FIRE so that you don't have to have the timely aspect of the arborist? I mean, we'll provide you an office, and you can come up and take care of your law.
I appreciate that. I'd love to be here every week. But they're not permits. We would have to.
Well, your paperwork.
I know, but I started with that because it's a very important distinction for coastal staff. What we do under Title 23 when we allow dead trees to come out on properties is not permits, and that's critical for them. They love the idea of the emergency permit because it's a permit. They know how to talk about a permit. They know how to issue conditions on a permit, but for what we do on individual properties, they don't know. They're quite frankly, they've been upset with us for years about that issue. They would like us to clarify that section of the ordinance. So we can't come up here and issue permits on individual projects unless we're talking about emergency permits or land use permits, and we all know that those take a long time.
Well, but is there any reason why you could not come up here and issue your, what do you call it now?
Land use authorization.
Your land use authorization? I mean, it seemed to me what we were first told is you didn't want 1,000 people running down to your office, and that you could only use an arborist for maybe 4 a day or 3 a day. And so you wanted someone else to do it for you. But the fact of the matter, it seems to me, is that you could have appointments, have them meet here in this hall, or we'll provide you someplace, and you sit down and do your land use authorization, and you've got CAL FIRE, and you can make $35 or $40 on a deal if you want, because you eliminate the $85 you charge because of the arborist.
So.
And you just deal with it you just administer your law as it is.
So the best answer I can give, I'm sorry, is going to be a little bit repetitive, and I'll be as honest and sincere as I can on this. We don't think that issuing land use authorizations is going to be good for your constituents, because it won't take long for the Coastal Commission to call us and say, stop that. Because they look at the cumulative ecosystem, and we're not issuing permits. As much as I'd love to be able to do that, they're not permits.
But how do you justify us, in effect, issuing 1,000 land use authorizations and not come under scrutiny of the Coastal Commission? If you believe that you're going to come under scrutiny and you're going to have problems, but what you're doing is transferring to us.
Okay, so I'm not doing a very good job of convincing you otherwise, but the difference is that those are not permits, and I can't stress that enough. That
land use authorization.
That's right. And so we're not telling you to issue a couple hundred or 1,000 land use authorizations. We're actually giving you the permission, if you will, to now have an agreement with those landowners and your own properties to remove up to 1,000 dead trees. All you got to do is have everyone sign the waiver, and CAL FIRE and us will communicate. And I agree that when the regular permit starts, whenever that is, if it ever is, then things get tighter and tougher, because now you're dealing with a project, you're dealing with a permit that's appealable to the Coastal Commission. That's another distinction I need to make.
But what you're asking is for us to trust you, and then you put Condition 8 in.
Well, lawyers run the world, so I mean, I would love to be able to stand here today and say, we're pulling Condition 8 out. I mean, one thing you may want to consider, and Erlen had this idea, and I don't know if your council would agree with this, but if we can get to a point today where you can agree to every change to the conditions but Condition 8, maybe you authorize agreement to sign the permit without Condition 8, and then we take that back and we talk about it. We're trying to keep this thing moving. Remember, we would have liked to have issued this thing 3 months ago so that you could have had a lot of work done this summer.
Getting started. Can I just ask for a clarification here?
Yes.
That I think I hear you say. It seems like you're saying that starting to go with these land use authorizations, that Coastal will get tired of that real quick.
Real quick.
And they're going to say, no, this isn't working. You seem to be saying that if we were to get the emergency permit, that we could progress and that we could remove trees. And yes, the emergency permit, is to move toward a permanent permit. But you're telling me that in another part of the state, depending on the continuing changing conditions, that emergency permit stays in effect, and that in essence, you'll never wind up with a permanent permit.
That's what happened in Monterey County.
And it's okay because you get your trees out. That's the purpose, is to get the trees out.
We have at least one case, one precedent doing exactly that in Monterey County for oak trees 7 years ago.
Yeah, so there is a precedent already, and so what are we thinking about that?
I have some thoughts, if that's all right.
Well, on this, I would like to just know what the board thinks about what he is suggesting is the emergency permit. But if we go with the land use authorization, which seems easy enough to go, but based on Mr. Jansen's experience, is not going to last long before it hits a roadblock with Coastal, is what I'm hearing.
Madam President, can I interject just for a second?
Yeah.
Let me clarify something with Matt. The land use authorization, as I understand it, is not appealable to the Coastal Commission, and I think therein lies the rub. There's really no control. There's no conditions and mechanisms by which the Coastal Commission can reach down. And an emergency permit is not appealable to the Coastal Commission, but it is a framework, and it does require a follow-up, and it does have conditions, and it does spell out a process, and I think that's really what you're looking at. Individual land use authorizations, in addition to being an enormous burden on the county, which is not a problem with me, they take an enormous amount of time, they cost money, and they require an arborist to go in there. Now, they could modify those requirements internally, but I have a feeling it would take them a long time. And I'm not arguing for you to accept this, but I think we need to clarify that individual land use authorizations obviously will eat up an enormous amount of time for staff at the county to process an issue.
So you're saying that Coastal wouldn't get tired of it?
Well, they'll get tired of it because they'll say cease and desist that. I don't know how the county would react to it, but they're going to issue a cease and desist order because, in effect, it probably does need somewhat of a framework in order to be effective.
Director
Behringer.
Behringer.
I went down to the county and got one of those authorizations for my 3 trees. It took me 2 seconds. You write a check for $129 or $139 and it's done. The big problem is that they send an arborist out. Wouldn't it be simple for them as an internal procedure to accept the word of a CAL FIRE employee as acknowledgement that the tree is dead? Is that something that the county could do?
That's what they're doing for us, so it seems that it would be easy for them to do.
Right. So the county would make more money if the individual owner went there and picked up this form. And the only problem we're having, I think, is that the county doesn't want to expose themselves to abusing the Coastal Commission. So why don't we approach the Coastal Commission and get the Coastal Commission to say, fine, you can take out 1,000 trees and end the conversation, because everybody's afraid of the Coastal Commission. Is a good organization. They like doing things for people. And yes, they have to look at the total project. But if you're looking at a forest and you have 1,000 dead trees there, they're gonna approve that. They're gonna acknowledge that, and everybody will be off the hook. That's kind of my suggestion. I don't know.
So can I respond to that?
Yes, certainly. Please do, Mr. Jansen.
So this is, while I agree there is a workload issue that we would have to deal with, that's not why we're here. That's not why we're talking about this emergency permit. And the fees are a non-issue also, because if you decline to enter into this emergency permit, then we're going to the Board of Supervisors asking them to waive all fees related to these land use authorizations. We've had this conversation with coastal staff, and they've told us flat out, you are not going to proceed removing hundreds or thousands of trees with land use authorization. They don't like it. They're going to stop it. So we don't mind the heat, and quite frankly, I appreciate coastal staff too. I've been working there with them 20 years. I have a lot of respect for them. We don't mind the heat. We take it all the time with coastal staff. We have a good relationship with them. But again, it doesn't do your community any good, because when we get shut down issuing land use authorizations, then the trees legally can't come out anymore. So we're talking about Fiscalini, we're talking about Cavell, we're talking about all CCSD property, we're talking about the few hundred that might get the 4291 letters. I mean, we're talking about 1,000 trees right now, but we can change that number to something higher. There's nothing magical about 1,000.
So, all right. So then I'll ask this. So you're saying, and your concern is when, based certainly on your experience and understanding, that if we go with the land use, what do we call it? Authorization? If we go with the land use authorization, then we could get a start on it. But you're thinking down the road, Coastal's going to shut it down. Now, down the road, if Coastal shuts it down, let's say we got 500 trees done, though, before they said enough already, or somehow are indicating to you they don't want to continue this, are you saying then at that moment, could we turn to the emergency permit? Because we have to, let's say we have 1,000 trees we must get down for many good reasons, to protect the community, but to certainly, enhance the forest in the future. So would it be possible, if we could agree to this, you could start issuing the land use authorizations, but when, as you predict it will happen, that Coastal says, no, we're not going to continue with this, would we be able to get the emergency permit at that point, knowing that that could probably play out just as an emergency till we get the rest of the trees down?
Well, that's an alternative. I mean, if your board doesn't want to take the action to sign on to this permit, and CAL FIRE, for whatever, for their reasons, decide not to step up as a separate applicant, then we're going to be stuck with doing it that way, and it'll work for a little while. I don't know how many trees will come out before we're stopped, and I think that the total number of trees that you need to come out for your community to be considered safe again is something you should ask the CAL FIRE representatives about, because I know it's well over 1,000. So, yes, we can hold the emergency permit application, if you will. We've done a lot of work on it. We can put it on the shelf, pull it out, dust it off, and reconsider the whole thing at a later date if you'd like. That's up to you. As I said, it's not my job to jam this down your throat. My job is to try to get a legal way for these trees to come out and keep commission staff at bay for as long as possible and mitigate the hazard in your community.
So we're at this place then, if we decide today to go with the emergency land use authorization, that you could grant those based on CAL FIRE's assessment rather than sending an arborist. Is that correct?
I think it would take a board action, but I'm pretty sure that if we went to our board and asked for a fee waiver, a blanket fee waiver for all those land use authorizations in Cambria urban area, that at the same time we would also take to them a determination, if you will, that CAL FIRE's expert evidence is equivalent to or better than our arborist going out. And so it would be kind of a blanket wholesale streamlining, if you will, of the review of the trees.
So we could start the process then, because I know everyone is anxious to get going on this. We could start then, if the board wishes, we could start with the emergency land authorization.
No, they're not emergency. They're not emergency land use authorizations. No. They're just land use authorizations.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's
land
okay.
use, new vocabulary.
Yes.
Land use authorizations, and we could then continue with this until we can't, until we find out we can't.
Well, it's not you. It's us.
It's them.
You would be out of it.
Well, they'll tell you. I mean,
they will.
You'll accept these, and then Coastal will, sooner or later, from your past experience, say to stop, and then we would have to have one more happy talk.
Well, it's not from just past experience. They've told us that they will stop us because they're not permits.
Okay. Here's the point. We're paying Senator Flores a lot of money.
Well, I've been looking over his way.
To develop an excellent relationship with Coastal Commission. That we're telling the Coastal Commission the right things and what we're doing. You, in effect, are asking us to go around the Coastal Commission. Because you're saying the Coastal Commission will shut you down. But if we use this scheme of using an emergency permit and then drag our feet on a regular permit long enough to get all the trees down, we will in effect subvert the authority of the Coastal Commission. I don't want to be in that position, because right now our credibility with the Coastal Commission is extremely important. And for you to ask me to conspire with you to get something done, that, when we first started talking, we said, Supervisor Gibson indicated, well, we'll talk to the Coastal Commission, everything will be okay. Now you're saying the Coastal Commission has said, no, we're going to shut you down. So the alternative then is to some way conspire so that the Coastal Commission can't deal with it. And I don't want to be there. I want the Coastal Commission to understand that we'll deal with them straight up and straightforward on all the things we do. And you're asking me to go around the horn.
Can I respond to that?
Oh, certainly. Yes, Matt.
Director Clift, with all due respect, I'm actually trying to say the opposite. I'm not doing a very good job. If an emergency permit is issued, whether it's to you or CAL FIRE or anyone, That is the right thing to do in the Coastal Commission staff's mind. We've had this conversation with them. We also do our darndest to keep a good working relationship with them. It doesn't do us any good not to. We communicate with them all the time. They're coming down to visit us next week. We're not asking you to conspire in any way, shape, or form. If you don't agree to the emergency permit, then what you've done is just to be frank, you've slowed the removal of the trees. You've eventually stopped the removal of the trees, because that's what they've told us they will do. Now, true, you've shifted the burden to the county, which is fine. Maybe that's your primary objective, but you haven't really you haven't mitigated much. Trees will come down because we'll start to issue the land use authorizations. It just will not occur anywhere near the pace that I think CAL FIRE wants and I think you want.
Other comments? Director Rice?
Thank you, President Robinette. We have an approved local coastal program, right, which essentially transfers the authority to issue permits to the county. It's still appealable to the Coastal Commission, but it essentially transfers that. They also approved the coastal zone plan of the Title 23 or whatever it's called, right, which is where the land use authorization language resides. And it seems to me part of what's going on here is that we don't have part of what is in the coastal program for this area, which is we have not put together a Monterey Pine Forest Management District, which is in the North Coast Area Plan. And it's one of the things that was added by the Coastal Commission before they would approve in 2007 this plan. And it's something that they really have been. It's part of our water master plan. It's part of all of the plans that we've put together. And it seems to me that part of the reason why they might stop a land use authorization, a mass issuing of land use authorizations for tree removal, would be the fact that we don't have a bigger picture forest management plan or district in place in order to monitor what's going on with the forest, because I think all of us love living in the pine forest. And I'm just going to bring it back to the forest, which is where I brought it last time. This is about making it easier for people, but it should be about managing our forest, which is owned by many, many, many people in this town. And that makes it a difficult proposition. What I heard our forester say was that there hasn't been very many undeveloped properties that have tree issues that they've inspected thus far. Seems to me that maybe some of these hazard trees are maybe on properties that are undeveloped. And if that's the case, then that should be falling under a kind of a separate issue anyway. It seems to me that I like the suggestion that President Robinette had of going with, let's do the land use authorizations, but I think that we might be on better terms with the Coastal Commission if maybe we looked quite seriously at how do we implement a forest management district for the health of our forest, because this may be similar to the oak trees in Monterey County, but is the oak tree forest in Monterey County one of 3 stands anywhere in the world? Probably not. This is a special forest. This isn't just oak trees here. And I think the Coastal Commission, because of that, does take it very seriously when we're looking at the health of the forest. Over the years, we've seen don't remove any tree anywhere ever for any reason, but that's not the best way to have a healthy forest. That's the good way to actually have the forest we actually have right now. So the Coastal Commission may not have been correct in don't remove any tree anywhere, anytime, because it's caused some issues with this forest. So has the replanting where they've become too thick, especially on the Covell Ranch. I know that, in my estimation, some serious dedication by this district and the county working together, which is what it says in the plan. Sorry to bring the black and white of the plan through here, but we work with the county, and instead of doing this emergency permit, we actually get started with some steps forward to do a forest management district. And I heard already from Laura Swartz that the Forest Committee would be happy to help. I'm sure that FFRP would help. They've already done some evaluation of the forest there. Alan Peters did already say that CAL FIRE is working on some other sections of the forest. It seems to me this is a much better solution would be to do the land use authorizations, then we've got the immediacy going on. If the Coastal Commission stops us, we will have the fact that we want to be getting started on working on this forest management district. It seems like we should have done it a long time ago, for one thing, but we haven't done it, so let's do it now, and let's get the trees down with the land use authorizations, and the hazard trees that we can get down, because the emergency permit doesn't do us any good in terms of getting toward what we really should be doing, which is protecting the health of the forest and restoring the forest to health.
Thank you. I would like to now hear from the person who I'm sure is going to have the solution, Chief Lewin.
Well, thanks for your confidence, but I'm afraid that might not happen. But so first of all, people are taking trees down now. They're going down to the county and they're applying for a tree removal authorization, as the Director Behringer did. That's going on now. And as we've done our math and we're learning and we're doing our inspections, we're finding that the people on normal-sized parcels in the community are already taking care of their problem. Now, certainly it would be beneficial if somehow we as officials and elected officials can somehow streamline that, because there is an emergency, and as we identified several months ago, it is a financial burden on these folks to have this all occurring during an emergency. I can tell you what our concern is, my forester and I, is that we have open space lands within the district boundaries that have more than 6 trees. We found out through this process that the limitation of the authorization is 6 trees. So how do we deal with the 190 trees we would like to remove right now on the CSD property? Now, I'm going to assume, and I'll look to Mr. Jansen and Mr. Carmel for this, that we could say you decide not to move forward on this, we could probably get an emergency application for the properties owned by the CSD. Green Space could come and get an emergency application, I assume, for the trees that they have on their open space, and the other land managers within the district and outside the district. Mr. Covell's property is outside the district. We have a lot of tree to do there. That isn't going to be included in this one as well. So I'm not going to offer any suggestions how to get out of this this predicament, but I can tell you that the end game is we need to get these trees down, and if we can do that now, starting tomorrow, that would be what we would like to do.
Thank you. And that's what I keep understanding and hearing too. It is now that we need to be doing this. And I think we're having good conversation, but it is a complicated kind of conversation. We're talking the land use authorization. It is up to 6 trees. I heard you say that earlier, and you've reinforced that. We can talk about, the Forest Committee, but that would slow it down even further. And that probably has a lot of legal definition to certainly look into. But I'm just looking for the best thinking in this room today, this afternoon, to reach a compromise, to be able to know that we leave this meeting today with a plan. And we should have taken that break, I told you. But anyway.
I can offer, ma'am, if you decide to go with this, that I think Mr. Schwartz had a good suggestion that we include in the agreement to count the number of trees so that we can provide that information readily back to the county. Certainly, we know how many trees there are on the lands that have been surveyed by Forester Alan Peters. So we can provide those kinds of numbers that will be less onerous on the district, of course. We can, if there is limited numbers of trees that property normal-sized parcel owners have, certainly we could take that responsibility on of issuing that authorization on behalf of the CSD through even the CSD Fire Department and the CAL Fire Station directly, so people could come in and get those. So I can offer up some things to make it less onerous on the district. I cannot help you at all with the indemnity issue or any of the legal issues, which those are beyond anything I have any power over. And I know Mr. Jansen would have liked for us to apply as CAL FIRE for the blanket permit. I can tell you we're not in the land management. We don't own land. We're the authority that requires people to take down trees. We don't think that would put us in a good place to also be the one authorizing it. So we just can't go down that road. So if this option doesn't play out, it is not an option for CAL FIRE to be the applicant.
Well, and land use and authority is not CSD either. In fact, it's solved. It is the county. Matt should be doing this for us.
If I could,
and I'm sorry.
If I
could,
sorry.
Let me give Director Thompson his turn. I'm sorry.
Well, actually, I've gotten more conflicted by the discussion. I mean, it's. I certainly understand Director Cliff's position, and Mr. Jansen suggested that perhaps we could pull it out and have further discussions on it. I think it's important that we expedite. I think that's certainly clear. And every once in a while, you have to hold your nose and vote for something, even if it's not something that you necessarily care for. So if there are sufficient votes to move forward on this, I would be the third vote if necessary, because I think it's important that we move forward.
Thank you, and that's what I say too. I agree. Today is the day because the urgency is now.
Well, let me.
But we also had Mr. Jansen who had some other comments, and I would like to give him that.
Let me suggest something else. Mr. Jansen has indicated the Coastal Commission will be down here next week. Why don't we sit down with the county and a representative from the board and the Coastal Commission and ask these questions, and then we can have a special board meeting and approve this if we.
How about we have a picnic on the ranch by the dead trees with the Coastal Commission? If you heard what Mr. Jansen said when he drove up here and he hasn't been here for a while, maybe it would make a difference. I mean, they've seen the video from the fire department, but maybe it would make a difference to actually have them come here.
So Coastal is going to be in the area next week?
Next Thursday? Yes, I think it's next Thursday. The 30th?
Is it just a representative, or it's not the whole commission?
We never really. No, it's just staff from Santa Cruz, but we never really know who we're going to get. Probably a couple of planners. As far when they do come down, they've usually booked their time out completely. I'm not saying you couldn't get in, but we already have 10 things on our agenda we need to talk to them about. This is very important. I imagine if we gave them a call and asked them to squeeze it in, perhaps they could.
I think it is an important and sensitive consideration with Coastal. It would certainly seem that if it were possible to have a CCSD staff person there, well, I would think Mr. Carmel, actually, when I look at it, and one of the board members. But then I will come back over to you, Mr. Flores, and because I also think this. I think we all want the right thing and the same thing. And I think no one wants to, quote, kind of step on anyone's toes whatsoever. But this community, the clock is ticking, of course. And so I'm just wondering if you have any comments on trying to get with staff next week. And are you, what, Director Rice?
I'm sorry, humming.
You're humming? Okay. Okay.
Keeping myself calm.
Breathe. So at any rate, I think we're getting closer to something. And I think we like to have everything out in the sunshine with this board and everyone here, because our hearts are all in the same place and the right place. So I would only wonder if perhaps with some staff members, and you don't know who, and they've got a full agenda, but I would think that it would be worth investigating at least and finding out if we could have one of the with Mr. Carmel, probably a member of the board, and probably someone from CCSD.
Madam President, at the risk of prolonging this, I know Vice President Clift's probably the most militant with regard to these issues. I think one way to really move this off high center quickly is to go ahead and approve it with the modifications he suggested and authorize you to pick the permit up, assuming he's still in favor of it, and I don't know that that's the
emergency
case.
Permit?
The emergency permit with the two suggested changes that would be striking Condition 8. In other words, you'd approve it subject to elimination of Condition 8 and the modification to Condition 7, which we could read into the record. It sort of shifts it back to the county and allows them to make fairly insignificant changes, at least in my view, and then reissue that permit, and you'd have the ability to go down there and sign it. Now, I don't know if Vice President Clift is still in favor of moving forward with those modifications or not, so it certainly is a way to get this out of this quandary.
Thank you. Would you like to respond to that, Vice President
And
Clift?
as I indicated here, I would be willing to move that we direct our staff to continue to work on the proposed emergency permit, subject to changing Condition 7 to, as I've stated here, and elimination of Condition 8, and the understanding of this board that if we find ourselves in the position where we're either in a lawsuit or in a cease and desist order from the Coastal Commission, we discontinue any further activity.
If that's the motion, I'll second it.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded, and Chief Lewin?
I don't know if this is a possible suggestion, if you could add language that said for properties other than those owned by the CSD. I assume because it's you own the property anyways, item 8 may not be as critical since you have ownership of that. And then we could proceed immediately on working on the Fiscalini property. I don't know if that...
Where did you want to include that language? I mean, what are you trying to exclude us from?
So I'm not sure. Thank you, sir.
Well, we could say that we direct staff to continue and with development of a permit that involves residential property only, or all property other than CCSD's property.
Yes, sir, if that's possible.
And under the fact that condition number 7 is modified and condition number 8 is eliminated.
And if I could just suggest alternative language so we can actually pick the permit up. If we can accept the permit and authorize the president to sign for the permit subject to those changes, I think it could be done without ever bringing this back and without any interaction.
That's fine with me.
I know you probably don't want to hear from me again, but I think what Chief Lewin was trying to say is that what we're trying to do here is include the 192 on Fiscalini Ranch. So whatever wording it takes to include that, that's where I think your chief would like to go, and we completely agree.
So you're wanting to include that in this emergency permit?
Yes.
Yes.
And I know Mr. Carmel is very charmed, and he'll be able to...
This is why it's important to clarify. Very important.
Okay, you want to...
Okay, we have, yes, weigh in, please. We have the foresters now.
If you'll indulge me, I'd like to take a turn as well. There's a real-life example I would like to explain very quickly. Since the land use authorization is only good for up to 6 trees, it's really only good, it's been the process that's been in place, and it's really only for residential landowners. So for the CCSD property, the ranch and the other land, that's not an option. It doesn't do anything. It's not an option for green space. It's not an option for Rancho Marino or the Covell Ranch or state parks or none. It's only for the residential landowners who will only want to remove, 3 trees to possibly 6.
Let them go.
Currently, the Friends of the Fiscalini have submitted a minor use permit.
You're right.
Application to his office. that is the lowest level of a coastal development permit. There's several levels that it could go. So what the emergency permit would do in that case is grant approval now while the minor use permit's being prepared. If the emergency permit is not used now, then the minor use permit application will still proceed through the system. And if we go back to the Bridge Street project that we were involved with, we had several dedicated staff funded to focus only on that project. It took us over 10 months to go through the CEQA process and get the staff report and get that permit approved. And in the case of the minor use permit they've submitted, I would submit it will take far longer than that. So all of those trees are just going to sit there for, at least a year. If we make good progress on the minor use permit, I would say it would be at least a year, and those trees are going to start falling down by the dozens. And I would have to recommend you consider closing the ranch myself. I mean, so. And that's an example for you on the property that you manage.
I'm thinking that I'm hearing the motion, though, include the ranch in the emergency permit. Is that the way we're hearing it? That's what we think we're saying by now.
Yeah, I was.
Thank you.
My attempt, absolutely, include everything in the CSD boundary. What I was trying to do was, rather than have a delay because we have to work out the issue of the condition 8, you own property, you're going to be responsible for that property in some fashion legally anyways because you own it, that maybe we could treat that ownership properties a little bit different and expedite actually cutting on those rather than negotiating with the county on item 8, on condition 8.
So, okay, you're saying with the public property, a CSD property, we could go with the emergency permit like right now.
As it is.
But I hate to split this out and keep bringing it back. I would rather get, even though we may not have that many residents out there yet that have to remove trees, to put them under this umbrella of the emergency permit would really streamline everything, I think. So could we hear the, yes, Mr. Carmel?
If you wanted to address that issue, we probably could, but I'll not address it until I'm told to.
Okay,
and that is excluding, what we're hearing is we'll indemnify the county with regard to trees we take down on our own property because we'd have to anyway. I think that's what was said. And
we would have to.
We could modify the condition to read that for trees located on CCSD property only, the applicant shall, as a condition. And I think that would probably get us there. Yes? That's true. I thought we tricked you.
Right. I believe that he would just, we could strike 8, but he doesn't have authority to strike 8. He'd have to go back and he'd have to.
He doesn't have authority to modify 8 either.
Right, so.
No. Okay, any discussion further on the motion that we have before us?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you, President Robinette. So I'm hearing you don't want to see this split apart for the CSD properties being a separate emergency permit from a potential nearly identical permit that would be applied for as a separate issue because after we needed to do that because the land use authorizations were halted. I'm not meaning, when I brought up the forest management district, I wasn't meaning that we get it done before we get all of this done. That's not at all what I mean. We definitely need to be continuing to take out trees that are dangerous, and especially on our own property. If this permit is required for us to take out trees on the ranch, then we need to be getting this permit. If this permit is going to cause problems because of the complications of having some other landowners, including green space, covered by this permit, it seems like that would be the smarter thing to do so that we can start getting the trees out that are causing the danger on our own property and then be working out these other, because there are, I agree with Director Cliff that there's liabilities here and there's things that are transferring responsibility. I don't know how much staff time it's going to take. I definitely would like to see the modification to the release of liability that has the count of the trees and the type, so that when we do make the reports, I mean, if this is going to go forward, that really should be in there because it's part of the conditions from the county. If we don't get it from the people who are going to be doing the permit through us, authorization, whatever it is, whatever way this thing goes, the release of liability really should have, so that our people don't have to go out and try and count the trees that are getting taken out, if that makes sense.
Any comment to that?
I don't know. I do have a question. If the Covell, is the Covell Ranch and Green Space, are they going to also require emergency permits in order for them to be?
They already
treated?
had, the Covell Ranch, I believe, was part of the Bridge Street thing that was already accomplished, wasn't it?
And that's expired. Since Green Space's property is within the district, they would be included. Covell Ranch is outside the district, so it's not.
So Green Space would be included, so no one's left out with what we're talking about.
Well,
Covell, but I thought that we had talked about Covell was pretty much getting taken care of.
Right, through us. That's the permit where we probably will be the lead.
Yes.
CAL FIRE will probably submit another minor use permit application or some other type of permit if some of these grants come through that I explained earlier.
So we're not going to leave Covell out, but it's going to be handled with a different permit.
I think we're confused. Earlier you asked Forester Peters how it looks, the Bridge Street. Yes, the homes that are near the Bridge Street project, there are some exceptions that are looking much better than they did prior to the project.
Yes.
The Covell Ranch in general is the largest stand of single ownership forest under the Land Conservancy's conservation easement. That area needs a lot of work. It needs a tremendous amount of, there's a lot of mortality in there that does need effort, and that's what we will have to come back for and ask for either an emergency permit or a minor use permit to get done.
Yes, and that's what you're handling actually under CAL FIRE.
Yes, that's
because that
outside
goes well beyond the boundaries of Cambria.
We will take that on as a separate item, and you won't even have to, other than your good input.
Okay, so what we're talking about now, and thank you for that, Chief Lewin, we know that the Covell Needs and Ranch then is also being pursued with another permit. You're working on that. We're talking now about the entire community as far as residential that has been identified by the inspections as being under this emergency permit, plus all of our public property that needs to have work. So actually, we're not leaving anyone out, correct?
Well, let's make sure one thing here. If there's more than 6 trees on the property, is that still going to be included in this emergency permit, or is that going to require a minor use permit?
It will be included in the emergency permit.
So whether it's our 190 or John Q. Citizens 12,
Correct.
it would be
Up
included.
to 1,000
Up to 1,000. That should do it.
for 3 years.
Okay, all right.
And by the way, so we don't currently have an application on Covell. We do have an application for the ranch.
Right.
And that's a multi-phased project of which 192 dead trees are part of one of the phases.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
So the motion is to.
Are we, just a second over there. Let's read back the motion, and then if you want to adjust it slightly. What do we think we have here? Pressure's on now.
Okay. Director Cliff moved to authorize the acceptance of an emergency permit streamlined permitting for removal of hazardous trees from the county and authorized use of dead tree removal emergency permit agreement and waiver of liability with property owners subject to changing condition 7, and which is listed in the handout, and elimination of condition 8. And if the board finds themselves in a cease and desist order from the Coastal Commission, they will stop the permit use immediately.
That's what we started with. Has it evolved, though?
Yeah.
Because,
Well, that was the motion.
okay, to me it's, because what I hear in a more direct way, once we have this emergency permit, then the the county would need to have their indemnity, is that correct? They would have to have that in there.
Well, what we're doing is shifting it back to the county to decide whether this is important enough to eliminate the indemnity condition. That's what we're doing.
Okay. All right. So then the motion as read back is really where we want to be? And we have a second? Any further discussion? Director Rice?
I'd like to suggest an amendment, hopefully a friendly amendment, that we include the A, B, C, and D under number 6, which is the...
Which page are you on?
I'm on page, I don't know, the second page.
Well, it's 103 or where?
I'm on the green sheet.
Oh, okay, on the green sheet.
I'm on the green sheet under condition number 6 as part of the complete application for a regular coastal development permit. A tree replacement plan shall be submitted, which describes at minimum, and there's A, B, C, and D, the facts of those particular things. It's the time of when the replanting will occur, the size and species of the replacement trees, the locations where they'll be planted, that be included in the release of liability that we're having the property owners come in and sign. Because we do have the address of the property on there, but it seems to me, especially regardless of how long a regular permit might take to undertake.
Let me ask a question.
But this is under the, okay.
Yeah, but let me ask a question of Chief Lewin. On your certificates, which require indicating a tree needs to be removed, it identifies the tree and the type of tree, doesn't it?
No, because the issue is that our inspectors go to the front yard of a house. They can't go into backyard, so they're doing the best they can. So we don't have details as described of what we would need.
All right. Okay.
The only, in commenting on Director Rice's comment, one of the things, and I guess maybe Mr. Jansen can help us this, is the tree replanting process could be delayed, right, as part until, so maybe you could address that. So maybe if there's a way to, we certainly would like to know how many trees they're going to remove and the species that they're going to remove on the authorization. The other two might be hard for the homeowners.
I don't think it's a problem right now, because what we're doing is saying, if you'll accept these conditions, we'll accept that. And this does give some leeway in terms of working with planning to how you define it, whether we define it or whether the homeowner defines it in their application or what. I assume the application indicates the tree and the type. I'm trying to remember when I had some trees removed, it seemed to me that I had to describe them on your application.
That's true, but that's not what I'm hearing Director Rice suggesting. If I'm following, she's suggesting that those three elements of our condition 6 be added to the waiver form so that information about the trees themselves is transmitted to CAL FIRE. And the county's perspective, we like that idea because that's more information that's going to get to us from CAL FIRE about the trees, if I followed that correctly.
Well, you don't have any problem with the way 6 is written now, I assume.
No. I think she's suggesting leaving 6 alone, just taking those 3 and adding them to the waiver.
I just want to make sure we have the data to report to the county.
I'm not suggesting in the motion any changes except to 7 and 8 and the understanding.
No, I don't want to change the conditions. I want to make sure that Exhibit A includes the data so that we can submit that stuff to the county.
Yeah, no, I'm not questioning that.
If I can interject, if you look at Section 1 of the agreement, the second sentence reads, property owners shall be responsible for compliance with any and all conditions contained in the emergency permit, including but not limited to, and then it lists that condition. But that's already a requirement. It's incorporated into the agreement.
And I would just like to have actually on the form a blank space for somebody to write down how many trees and what type they were. Even if we don't have the replacement on there, we need to be, in my opinion, for the health of the forest and the good of the forest management plan that may or may not be formed. It is good for the forest for us to know how many were taken out, and in order to be able to give a replanting in a replacement plan, we have to know what was taken out so that we know what we have to replant eventually, whether we do it immediately or not.
True.
And to not collect that data at the same time we're getting the information about the property from the property owner is silly. And I know that we are not the land use folks, but we're going to have to, that's part of the conditions, is we're supposed to report to the county how many trees were taken out. And if we just have an address, we have no idea, or we have to send people out to go and look, and we don't want to do that.
So where will this be listed, and who's going to keep track of it?
It would be on the agreement and waiver of liability forms that come in at least at first, which I'm assuming would be public record and could be used,
From
yes?
the homeowners?
I'm a little confused. So you're reading from 6A through D. Is that right?
Yes.
That all deals with the replacement plan.
Yes.
Let me help. I think if you turn in your package to page 105 in your board package.
We're into two different documents right now.
Okay. And in 105, there's the waiver of liability document, and in there we have all the requirements that the property owners, and then they have to sign. And then in that, at the bottom of that document, at the top of that document, we can put some blocks in there that say number of trees removed, species of trees removed.
That's what I'm looking for.
And the location of the trees that are being removed.
That's what I'm looking
for. The one
That
question
could-
I don't know that we
That
could.
could be done. I don't see it.
Yeah, if it's included there, then we've got a record.
Yeah, and that would help us report, and because I assume after I talk to the general manager, he's going to be tasking us with this, as well as I'll task my folks that will accumulate that, then we'll easily be able to turn it into the county.
Okay, yeah, and so then it would identify the type of tree and the replacement that would be required when it's time.
Yeah, the replacement plan may not require that it be the same species. Those things could be deviate based on the right forest plan. And the one, 6D is the one that's difficult, because I wouldn't want to include that one necessarily, because good forest management may say, you did remove an oak, but we want a pine, or vice versa, or maybe we want a bay laurel. I don't know, but that's for the forestry people to figure out.
Okay, good.
So
Good discussion.
If I can make my friendly amendment more clear, that we add a box to the agreement and waiver of liability, two boxes, one that would say how many trees, and the other one would say what type.
Mhm.
Is that agreeable? To
Yes, that we include that in there on the.
Is that
this.
Just include it in the motion.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
In the
fine.
motion.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think you have a
Are
slip.
you on public comment? And we're not voted yet, and so yes. Mr. McKinnon, public comment. We're always glad to see you. Welcome.
Stretched because I was tired. Jerry McKinnon, a Cambria resident. I'm curious, Mr. Clift, why you did not include number 3 on the front page because that indicates that the CCSD has a responsibility. But regardless of that, here we have a community of politicians. We have a representative of a community of politicians. We have a workforce. All I want is the survival of our little town of Cambria. Cut down those dead trees so it lessens the possibility of fire. Now, when I read this first little paragraph, the purpose of this emergency permit is to mitigate fire hazards in Cambria by establishing a streamlined permitting process for removal of up to 500 to 1,000 dead or dying trees deemed hazardous by CAL FIRE. Under this permit, CAL FIRE's hazardous tree determination will serve as evidence verifying that the identified trees meet the tree removal criteria in Coastal Zone Land Use Ordinance section. Trees removed pursuant to this emergency permit will not be subject to individual tree removal permits or payment of associated permit fees. I'm just a taxpayer. Why can't I get on the phone, call CAL FIRE, and say, hey, CAL FIRE, come out and hang a purple ribbon on this tree because it's dead. CAL FIRE comes out and looks at it. It has a purple ribbon hanging on it. That's the end of it. All we need now is an arborist to come down and cut down the tree. Why all of this political stuff going on here to save our town? It's just, it's aggravating. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jerry. I think, in fact, it always still actually bothers me to be called a politician because I am a Cambrian and I am here to serve Cambria. But I would say this, that I appreciate your comments, and I think ultimately what you're hoping for, while it took a while today, absolutely is the direction we are taking by now. And I think it's been great dialogue, and yes, we need to certainly have the support and the involvement both of county and CAL FIRE and the board and our public here. But that's what I think we're trying to find is the fastest way to get those trees identified and down. So I completely think, hopefully that's what we're doing here right now. More discussion? Ready for the motion? Let's have it. Who made the motion?
Director Cliff, seconded by Mr. Thompson.
Yeah, shall we have, can we have Ms. Madrid? Time's up, though, sorry. Just a minute. Would you like to read this back for us then, since we've made a few more little alterations?
Sure. Director Cliff moved to authorize the acceptance of an emergency permit, streamlined permitting for removal of hazardous trees from the county, and authorize use of a dead tree removal emergency permit agreement and waiver of liability with property owners subject to changing condition 7 as listed in the handout and elimination of condition 8, and add a box to the waiver showing how many trees and the species of trees to be removed. And if the board finds themselves with a cease and desist order from the Coastal Commission, they will stop the permit use immediately.
All right. Are we ready? It's been moved and seconded.
I have to interrupt one more time. I'm very sorry.
No.
But a wonderful change was just pointed out to me by Chief Lewin. If we could add to page 107, which is the signature page of the agreement, district manager or designee, because the district manager's on vacation, and if someone wanted to do this now, that would hem us in a little bit. Sure. We can go forward.
Okay, very good.
So noted.
All right.
Do I need to change that or in the motion?
Okay, because in that way, this gets moving right away. Okay, very good point. All right.
What time do people get to start their chainsaws in the morning?
Let's have our vote. Okay, we have one more comment by Mr. Jansen, and then we're ready.
No, I just wanted to say thank you very much for spending as much time on this as you did. And Erilyn and I will do everything we can to get rid of number 8. You know, it'll be a little bit of a magic trick, but we'll do everything we can. And we hope to be able to return an answer of yes soon, but I just can't guarantee it today.
Right, I understand.
Thank you.
Well, I thank you. You have been very wonderful, very flexible, very much wanting to be, you know, part of a solution, and so we appreciate that. We think we've all worked hard to get where we are. Let's have a roll call.
Vice President Cliff?
Yes.
Director Thompson?
Aye.
Director Berenger?
At the advice of Mr. Thompson, I'm going to hold my nose and say yes.
Director Rice?
Aye.
President Robinette?
Aye. Thank you. Motion passes 5-0. Okay, we have a little bit more business to do here, not too much, but thank you all for all your help and your comments and your public comment on this item. It's a very, very important item to Cambria. Okay, let's see, we have no further public comment to carry over from the start of the meeting, so we are moving on to item 11. Future agenda items, and it seems that we had one rather clear that we wanted to actually put forward today with the board for a motion to do something. Yes, would you like to propose that? Make a motion? Okay, and
excuse me, I so moved.
okay, and that is let's be a little more clear with it. On the future, it's an agenda item, so we just want to have the local hazardous mitigation plan discussion. Good. Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion on this?
I just want to make sure that we all know what it is that we're looking at, so that's where.
Yeah, it has to be here now. I mean, it's a thought, but we've got to get going on it. Okay, so roll call, please.
Director Clift?
Aye.
Director Rice?
Aye.
Director Berenger?
Aye.
Director Thompson?
Aye.
President Robinette?
Aye. So this will be added to the August agenda, hopefully. So the motion passes 5-0. And Director Thompson?
Also, I would move that we have an update on the fire assessment program, not necessarily in August, but at such time as the as report prepared that will give us that update.
Okay.
Second.
Second? All right. Fire assessment just clarify a little bit. The trees, maybe?
No, the fire assessment fund.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we'd ask for
Did you want to
that,
include
yes.
the SAFER grant with that, or is that a separate item?
That'll be separate. We'll have some discussion at the.
I know there's a timing issue probably on a grant, but I don't know. I mean, I know the bigger policy,
Yeah.
but we've got this grant right now. Don't we have to do something like?
We haven't had a request for it, too.
Okay, I just wanted to
Yeah.
know, so that's not included in with the fire
Correct.
assessment.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that'll be a
Thank you,
separate,
that answers
Okay,
my question.
thanks for that clarification then.
No.
So,
May I ask a question?
yes.
You're asking to have the finance manager come back and tell you where the money is going.
Basically, some sort of report on that.
Okay, when he returns,
Yeah.
of course, because he's on medical right
And
now.
again, it doesn't have to be in August. It's whenever that person can prepare the report and come
Yeah.
back to us on it.
Yeah, how much is taken in and how is it used?
It is a process, you just adopted the list, like last month, and it's
Yeah.
around $436,000, and
Yeah.
it does all go to the fire department, but let's have him come back and.
Yes, when
show you
he's
where it is
when
in
he's
the budget.
back and ready with the report, the first one, of course, we want back in August, but this one is soon, but not just now. So, all those in favor, roll call.
I did.
Mike.
Director Thompson?
Aye.
Director Rice?
Aye.
Director Berenger?
Aye.
Vice President Cliff?
Aye.
President Robinette?
Aye. Motion passes unanimous. Any other future items? Agenda items?
Yes.
Director Rice?
Thank you, President Robinette. I have two that I would like to see. One that's, and I don't know how time sensitive either one of them are, frankly, but seems to me sooner rather than later. The first one would be something that we talked about in December about having a discussion about when the emergency advanced water treatment plant is turned on. We had a discussion that there's some things that are technical, like well levels and such, but that we should be having a policy discussion about how and when do we determine when it gets turned on, and it may be that when that gets brought back, that it's just a technical well level, but it seems to me.
They just said that in the general manager.
But we didn't have a policy discussion about it, so I would move that what triggers us to turn on the advanced water treatment plant, because it does change the rates that are getting charged.
Director,
Vice
President
I thought we
Cliff?
had a discussion here, last month or the month before, in which we indicated that we would leave that to the general manager and the water department.
We did, and if I can interrupt, that's a purely operational issue that needs flexibility.
Yeah, I thought we made that determination here.
Purely operational.
That rather
Then
than
I
set,
didn't-
rather than set an arbitrary date or an arbitrary level.
Oh, I definitely wouldn't want to put an arbitrary.
That we would leave it to the manager and the water engineer and the water people to make that decision.
Okay.
May I make a comment? I do believe the manager's report today said that when the gradient in San Simeon goes to zero, they're going to start that's going to be the trigger to start the plant.
Okay. And that's a variable. We won't know when.
Yeah, and when
But
that
they'll
happens,
know.
it happens. May never happen.
Yeah,
It'll
could be. Yeah, you had a second one, though.
I do, and again, because I don't know enough about it, to know if it's something that needs to go onto the agenda. I do appreciate the ad hoc fire committee looking at policies on how do we do grants, the proper procedure for grants, but it seems to me this particular one, since we've been awarded it, but it doesn't have the right amount, it seems like that this might be a good discussion to be having, because I don't want to lose out on that money if we can manage to either amend the grant amount or whatever needs to be done. But I would like to at least have a report on it, even though it didn't go through the procedures that don't exist yet. I would move that we have a presentation on the SAFER grant, and if the board needs to approve it. I mean, I don't know if it needs board signature. Nobody wants to do that? All right.
Okay.
That's $450,000. You
we-
don't want to have a report at least on it?
Are we ready to move forward? Okay. Any other suggestions on future agenda items? All right. Item 12. Before we look to move to adjourn to closed session, let's see, I see no request for public comment. So then, with that, I would like to adjourn this meeting to closed session.
And can I be very specific, Madam President?
Yes.
We're adjourning to closed session. It's item 12 on your agenda. 4 conferences with labor negotiators under Government Code 54957.6, IAFF, SEIU, Management and Confidential, and the General Manager.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Meeting adjourned.